Okay, I'm going to call to order the Board of Education meeting for February 14th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, public comments? Seeing none in the room. Jamie, are there any online? Don't see any there either. Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to add the 2024 calendar to agenda to 5B.
can I have a second?
I'll second that.
And also,
Oh, wait, I'll just,
excuse me.
so I'll, in the discussion, say that I just, need us to be able to talk about the current year's calendar. So all in favor? Aye.
I just kind of missed the motion.
Lisa is going to add an agenda item, to 5B to discuss this year's calendar.
then also make a motion to add the Board of Ed meeting dates to the agenda for 5C.
I'll second that.
And we just need to discuss some of the conflicts with the budget calendar. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's everyone. Thank you. So that starts us off with the facility and finance discussion. And the first thing on that list is the elementary school gate. 2 Fridays ago, there was a home boys basketball game and an elementary school dance. And I think I was there, Chet was there, Judy was there, Jamie, I think you were there. And parking was wild. And so Troy has agreed that we could easily open that gate that we put in when we did that paving, when we are talking about things that are occurring outside of school hours to provide additional parking during school events, which I think will help a little bit. Troy, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was part of the design when we're talking about paving. We're repaving the blacktop. We had actually talked about painting lines for the parking, but we decided against it. There was discussion of, people pulling in there and hitting playground equipment or the building and all that, and we think that it's probably worth a try to see what happens if we open the gate during an event. And it would be kind of a self-serve parking situation, kind of like people have done at the grassy area between the schools. And I think that was working fine until it got really muddy. But now that we have the blacktop, I think it's worth to try it and see. And if it doesn't work well, then we can kind of refigure that plan.
Great, thanks, Troy. So hopefully the next time that we have an elementary school event, that will relieve that parking. It was a little wild out there. Also sort of occurring at the same time was the rain that thawed out the ground in that grassy area where the old elementary school parking lot used to be prior to the renovations. And Judy, for those of you that didn't see it, Judy took some pictures of what was going on over there, and it turned into a big muddy mess. I know that Kristen and Allison were trying to help kids get their cars out of there. Randy, I think, maybe pushed a car out of there. And so obviously it causes a huge problem for us. We can't have the grass torn up, and we are lacking in parking. So Troy and I discussed it, and I spoke with Bob Carlson in terms of a temporary fix and then a more permanent fix. this is an interesting conversation, given that it's positioned right at the time that we're having those talks with the town and the Board of Finance about who is responsible for maintaining what as part of the school building and grounds. And actually will provide a great thing to be discussed at the first meeting tomorrow night. So I guess it's fortuitous in that way. However, to do something now, the town is willing to bring in the millings that we have at the transfer station, bring those in and pack the millings in so that people can park there, that there's no mud, and that we'll still have parking, because parking is a problem at our school right now. And then there are some discussions about paving, and whether that paving would be able to happen next year or the year after. That would be something that it looks like the selectmen could add into their budget, although I do hear some conversations that perhaps that's just something they would be able to do on their own and not have to call in someone. So that's, it's pretty exciting. But Troy, do you have other stuff that you want to add to that?
I think that about covers it. But although we did have, Randy actually got 3 quotes to pave it already. So we
Right.
have an idea if we were gonna have someone do it, what that might cost.
Right, and I was able to discuss that number with Bob Carlson, just so he had an idea what that would look like. Randy did a wonderful job and a very fast job when the problem became so apparent.
Goal 3, efficiency.
Very efficient. He was wonderful, and did a lot of legwork. And so it looks like there are definitely two paths that we can take: an immediate fix, and then a more long-term fix. However, I think that we probably should give everyone an opportunity to weigh in. If there's someone that feels like we shouldn't be doing that, we should probably hear that as well. So does anybody have strong feelings about addressing that parking situation? Okay, that sounds good. So I will keep you updated as I get more information. Moving on to monthly financial reports. Bill, would you like to take over from here?
Okay, thank you. So in order to have more detailed reports, I hope I don't overwhelm people, but so the reports were presented in the old format, and then we presented them in a new format that maybe more people are more detail, sorted by object code. And object codes are 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. And they follow the standards set by the, what's in what code is set by the state. And then in your packet, which I don't think was emailed to you because people were interested in, well, that's nice, there's all these numbers. So behind the one that's sorted by object code, there's another report that's sorted by projected balance, from what we think will be the highest projected balance left over to where we think will be a negative balance going from high to low. Because it was asked that, now that we're halfway through the year, where we were going to think we could be at year end. So when I did the exercise, I encumbered all the salaries. No, the system does that, which then includes some of the benefits. And some expenses are already encumbered, and I went through and projected what I think some of the other expenses will be for the end of the year. And based on that, he seemed to be, pretty much on budget, in good shape, with a little cushion in case something comes up. So that, and there are a couple items that, people have been concerned about special education costs. Well, I gave an explanation. I don't know if all of you had a chance to read my email that went out late this afternoon. So we sort of, the budget, when we did the budget, we weren't sure of the of what was in the grant accounts and how the grants were set up. So in essence, we cut contracted services when we should have cut tuition. So that's why tuition has a big savings. Contracted services has is the other way in similar amounts. We're currently, the contracted services is really the services we have with, for the BCBA and the RBTs. And we're currently reviewing that to make sure that what we have encumbered is still an accurate number. There is not much help left in the grant accounts. Grant accounts have been allocated. The money in any grant account has been allocated. There was some money in the grant account for student transportation, but that looks like we had a change in someone's transportation, so we're going to use that for our current situation, so we don't have to use the regular budget. And then in general, we took the credit for the gas. So that's included now in the numbers, took the $34,000 credit for the overcharge of gas. And we put that in the budget. We got the special ed payment from Voluntown, so that's included in the budget. We have not gotten the payment from Preston yet. So we still have a credit coming when we receive that. The special ed tuition comes directly, well, we get credit for the special ed tuition, doesn't go to the town as revenue. So, so we have we'll be getting another $17,000 credit when that comes in. And that usually applied against the contracted services. Couple other accounts that had issues with communications and telephone. We had some issues with telephone vendors, and we had issues with the lines. Maybe remember back, we had issues with the firebox and the fire alarms. We had a lot of issues with our analog lines being disconnected, not being able to find them. So there was some effort and extra time spent there and trying to get rid of lines that we no longer used and switching to a new carrier. So we had some additional expenses with that, but going forward and into next year's budget, that issue has been resolved. So that was a problem area. And then we didn't budget for new computers for teachers. And then when I put them in repair, people said, don't put them in technology repair, put them in their own line, even if there's no budget for them. So, but if you look at the computer repair, we had not spent a lot of that money. So that will offset the purchases that we bought that we didn't budget for. So that will offset that. And I don't see any reason why that should be no surprises with the health insurance. That should come in on budget and probably have a little more savings than what's in the report at the moment. And I don't know how detail you want to go through, how many lines you want to go through, but there were some questions that were asked by Alex and Christine that were answered and emailed to people. But I think as far as looking to year end and how we're tracking, I would say we're right on budget. No, obviously there'll be some unexpected things will come up, but there's always then unexpected savings at the same time. And we should be saving on energy, warm winter. Our electric costs will go down the next few months. I got a new electric provider, supplier, went out to bid. Well, found a company that does the bidding for you. They went out to bid for us. And so we'll be getting lower rates on the supply than we're currently paying now. So that'll be savings for the rest of this year and into next year. Hopefully be like around a couple $1,000s a month. And then far as other things to report on, we're in the 5th year of our transportation contract with M&J. We had a 3-year contract with a 2-year extension, and we took advantage of the 2-year extension, which is pretty normal, but you can only write it for 3 years. So you have a chance to get out of it. That's sort of by the state. So, and usually, we'll be looking by hiring a consulting firm to do the specs. Because they sort of know there's a lot of things maybe we want to put in that we don't want to think about, not just same old. Maybe we want to put in GPS or trackers, or there's so much out there now. If you want to pay, you can know where every kid is at every moment. When they get on the bus, when they get off the bus, who's on the bus, who's off the bus. So it's a lot of things we want to maybe think about when we place the bid for the contract, which will be for another 3 years with a 2-year extension.
Bill, when do we have to get that RFP out for transportation?
Well, it would be for, next
Next school year?
September, next school year.
Right.
So we're working on it, starting to work on it now. We can do it this spring.
So, transportation's a huge line item for us. So I get concerned when I hear we're going to spend more. And just history, when we've looked at going out to bid, we get first student to bid and M&J. In the 2 cycles I've been through, that's what we've seen. And M&J has been fantastic to us, and their buses are on site, and they always come in significantly lower. So my concern is spending money on consulting and going for large bells and whistles when we're already spending so much on transportation. I'm just wondering if, in light of expense, if we can just kind of go the way we've been doing it and see who comes to bid before we start asking for all of these extra things. And do without having to pay a consulting firm and everything else.
I would very much agree with Christine on this fact, because I know that the bells and whistles tend to be more difficulty than they're worth. I've seen them implemented in terms of the cards that the kids have to swipe, so you know where they are, and all of these other pieces, and you've got kids losing cards. Everything becomes a new headache, and I don't feel like we have an issue. It's one of those things where there's not a problem. So if there's not a problem, let's not look to create one just because we have new technology available. I think it falls into that, what was it, a $1,000 pencil or something that came into play with that innovative learning piece of things. So I think we put it out and see what happens.
So maybe if we could just start, Chet, I'm going to start with you for questions regarding Bill's report in general.
No, honestly, the only piece of it that came into play for me was the transportation. When I was looking at it, I was just curious about how exactly that happened in terms of the extension, if it was possible to just continue an extension. When I looked through it, that was the piece that most concerned me, was prices of things don't go down, and transportation is a lot of money.
According to the purchasing policy, we have to go out to bid with sealed bids, because it's obviously over $20,000.
Jamie? Alex?
Yeah, I submitted some questions. Bill responded to them adequately. We talked about a little bit more format on the content, and I was happy with the response on that. So, and we'll continue to keep tracking, see how things go. Appreciate the year-end look, kind of as a heads up to see where we may be going. So it may help on planning on other expenditures or other places for savings. So it was a good information. Thanks.
Lisa?
I'm good, thank you.
Christine, you had some other questions in your email. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
had-
they were all addressed.
Just a couple of quick ones. What did we budget for CABE membership, and is it $6,200 more than what we budgeted? What is our CABE membership cost?
It's over, it's like over $10,000.
And what did we budget for it? Because
Well,
I don't
just-
understand why that went up so significantly and how
Like,
we
got
under budgeted.
more, we got the policy, I don't know, I don't know where. We have policy and membership.
So we've always had that policy service membership. So I'm just kind of curious where the gap is there. $6,200 seems significant. And if that's all going to CABE on top of what we budgeted,
Well,
that is something for me to kind of take pause.
it's not all K, I can give you more detail. There are a couple other things in there too.
Okay, if we could just see what we budgeted, because I know we haven't
Okay.
changed our membership lines with them. We haven't added any services. So if we could check that. And
Okay.
then the electric supplier, are we doing a contract on that with the new supplier that we found for that?
1 year.
1 year? Okay.
And,
And,
and 1 year you can cancel with 60 days notice,
okay,
anytime.
right, okay, perfect. And then, yeah, I guess the only other thing would be that transportation piece was my only question.
Okay, great. Judy? Okay, perfect. Bill, I have a couple of questions. In terms of circling back to the bus, I don't think Christine was suggesting that we hadn't gone out to bid in the past. We have gone out to bid. I think what she's saying is we don't get bids from a gazillion other places. We usually get two, and M&J always is significantly different. And so, I don't think anyone's suggesting that you deviate from what we've done in the past or deviate certainly from the purchasing policy. I think what jumped out to me, and I think it jumped out to Christine as well, is the idea of hiring a firm to do the specs for this RFP. How much does that cost, and how did you determine that that would be helpful for us?
Well, getting bids, if it's, obviously if it's outrageous, we're not gonna do it. But I've done that a couple times in the past. Because there's a lot of, idiosyncrasies that sometimes you don't think of.
So are you getting bids to have a firm to put together the specs for the bid for the bus contract?
Yeah, I'm getting quotes at the moment, just to see what the cost would be.
And what do you, I guess I'm looking to see, much like Christine, I'm super concerned that transportation is so expensive in our district because our district is so spread out. It's just so expensive. And I feel like, we have spent a lot of time over the years trying to figure out the most efficient way to handle it. And so I'm wondering what expected efficiencies are you looking for in a company that we pay to put that bid out that we've been able to do in the past?
Sorry to interrupt, but I think Bill was just simply saying that we have to go out to bid for transportation, and he was just talking about some of the possibilities related to that. Bill's not going to make the decision by himself to contract for someone to write up the RFP. He's researching, which is appropriate to do, to see what would it take to get some quotes for someone to write this up. He's not going to make the decision to do that, but to have that information and to bring it back to me and the board, and then you guys could decide if you want to spend that money that way, or you want to just do the RFP yourself. We're not saying we have to go to a consultant to do this. He's just looking at options.
And if we could just see where our old RFP is, because I don't think it's going to be much different for what we used before. I guess I think that's kind of where Steph's getting at, is what are we looking to change? If we're really not planning to change anything at this point, pull the old RFP and put it back out. Just as the standard process that we've done in the past.
We could totally do that. And Bill obviously has experiences doing something else and, that's what he's, going after. But certainly, yeah, if it worked in the past, we could do that.
I agree with you, Troy, that due diligence is really important and I think it's great that Bill's trying to do that. I just hate to see us waste resources, time and energy on something that might be it's just so cut and dry in this particular district. It might not be worth it. So, and then Bill, you mentioned in your report, you're upgrading the security system for central office. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, currently not the fire, but the alarm system is not connected to anything in central office. The alarm goes off, but it doesn't call out. It's a communication problem you can't seem to fix. Again, this is part of the ongoing telephone issues we have with the schools. Because I don't want to get into all the details, but when they came to work on analog lines, they go up to the telephone pole up across the street from the police station, from the Park and Rec building. That's where the line starts, comes to here, the demarc is here, goes underground to the school, so there are lines all over the place. A lot of lines were never disconnected when the school moved across the street, so on and on. So we can't seem to find the line for the alarm system. So we're just looking to get another alarm system so that central office, the computer room, April's office and Ryan's office will just basically have a door and a sensor. That's all. It's not very expensive. And so we're just looking to upgrade it so that it works properly. That's all.
Okay, and do you expect that this is something small enough that you can just get the 3 quotes on, or do you expect to have to go out to bid on this?
Oh, it's only a few $100s.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you. I think the rest of my questions relate to the non-lapsing account. Judy, do you have another
So
question?
the new pieces that you're gonna put in, is that gonna be able to call out? You're gonna fix it so it can call out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the new system, basically, what we've gotten to go from is ADT, and it's wireless now, so the lines aren't. Okay, so for the fire, which goes to Groton Dispatch, you need a line. For the alarms, you don't need a copper line. You can use wireless.
Good, Judy? Okay. All right, so our next topic is the non-lapsing account. Bill, do you have anything you want to talk about the non-lapsing account before we take questions?
We've updated Christine, made some comments. It was in her email, and some suggestions that I think, so we'll take some of those, into account. But there's no change to the numbers. There's a couple things, we bought the batteries for the lights on the street. So, but it's still down below because I wasn't positive if that was the only cost. The town did a lot of the work, but I'm not sure if they were going to bill us for anything else. I don't think so. But, so at the time of the report, that's just the cost of the equipment that we purchased to go inside the box. And then the town did the work. So hopefully that will be done and we can take off the rest of the money that's allocated for there. The playground, we've updated for 2 new pieces of equipment, but we still have some money in the account that currently is just there in case there's any additional charges or installation or something else happens or comes up. But hopefully most of that will be able to go away too. That's in the under consideration section.
Chet, I'll start at your end of the table. Do you have non-lapsing questions or comments? Jamie? Alex? Lisa? Christine?
I think you answered those, Bill, for me. I think the board should maybe take a look at what we have in the under consideration and start zeroing some of that out. If we haven't spent all of that on playground, I'd like to see us zero that out. Just some of these others as well, to be, kind of get a more accurate number of what's left in that account is my concern. I just would really I would like to see that bottom line be exactly what we know we've got left to work with.
And Christine made another suggestion, which was a good one, where you see, yes, I'm going to change that and put in a date. When you
That would
said,
be
yes,
really helpful. Yeah.
and just
yeah.
saying, yes, you approved it, I'll put it in the date. And actually that will help us because sometimes we need to go back and look at the minutes ourselves to go, how much did they say?
Yeah,
So that's what we'll do on that line.
that's great. Judy, questions from you?
No, just as far as the school lights go, the deal that we made with the town was everything, they're covering everything on their end, so we can close that part out. We're done with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and my comments, I think are along the same line as Christine's. It's difficult to see where we're at with all of these other numbers. So I concur that if there are things that we can just close out, and how does that process happen? So how would you know when the town is done with that project? Let's use the lights, for example. So I think that Judy and I are pretty clear from our conversations that we're done and that money can return to non-lapsing, but how would you find out when something's done?
Sort of like that, or I talk to the town or, just through conversation, really. There's no formality between, stuff with the town. Obviously, like with the playground and stuff, I would be talking to Randy.
Mm-hmm.
Say, is everything installed? Have they come? Does anything else need to be done? Are we all set? We meet,
Yeah, because
Troy and I and Randy meet, to go over those things.
because like a couple of my questions that I sent, and I know it was late in the day that I sent that, so I apologize for that. I didn't even expect that you'd get back so quickly, so thank you. Like the alternative ed, we budgeted 10,000 for that. We've only spent 260. Do we need any more over there? Can we now say that's taken care of? Where are we at? And let's close that out. Same with the wood shop. Like, I know we allocated so much, but if we didn't need it, then can it stay in the account so we can allocate it to something else and not just keep it flagged eternally for
I think
Velvet?
I think you picked two areas that were very likely to do that, but I think before we commit to that, we'd want to talk to the people directly involved in those areas just to make sure. But
Okay.
I think you're right. We
Okay.
could probably trim that back or possibly zero it out. Yeah, we have to talk to the people.
So maybe, Troy, do you mind just maybe taking a look at all of those line items?
Yeah, I made
Because
a note.
we could go down each one and ask basically the same
Yeah,
question.
we really can. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I think you picked the two, obviously like, for example, the field improvements, right? You guys have talked a lot about doing the irrigation for the 46,000 because we got the steep grant, right? Which is like 20% of the 230 or something like that. And you talked about maybe not doing the field improvements beyond what you already did with the softball and baseball field. So if the board, that's kind of a board decision on that one. If you want to zero that one out, there's $115,000.
Well, I just think we hadn't approved that piece yet. So while it's still one of our top priorities in our list,
Right.
it really shouldn't be on our spreadsheet as a spend, I don't think, a spendable line.
It feels
item.
like it would be in capital other projects as opposed to there, right? Because it's things that we're considering, but we
Yes.
haven't put into non-lapsing as the place where we're going to.
So
spend
maybe
it.
if it's not, I'm thinking if we haven't approved it, maybe it shouldn't be on this consideration. I just don't want to show it as part of our bottom line. I
Yeah,
guess
great
would be my
idea.
consideration.
So only things that have been approved could go on this list.
And maybe there are things, because I know that there's a difference between things that we've discussed and that capital slash other projects list. Like, I get that that's sort of like the long-term wish list, and then there are things that we've talked about. I hate to give it another heading, but it does look really confusing the way it is. And so maybe if it could just be noted differently, it will help us to understand, especially going into budget season. I think it's going to be really important for us to know how much money is in that account. Lisa?
Well,
think-
but even that 115 is reallocated from the capital budget. So to be in that capital line item, I don't know.
I think it would be beneficial to come up with an actual process to close out any of these line items. So Bill would know when it's closed out. You don't have to, hope to have a conversation with somebody, to let you know. And the sheet would be much more accurate that way. If maybe, every couple months or mid-year or whatever, the wood shop and other line items have a sheet, a closeout thing, some kind of a documentation that would then go to central office.
Well, I think maybe some of it's just that, once a month, Troy, I, and the administrators, whoever's involved, just bring it up as an item to talk about. Because we haven't been doing that really. We just let it sort of slide. So I
Okay.
think the real answer is for us in central office is to pay more attention. Like at least once a month is to ask April, is she going to need to order more furniture for the, or David, is he going to need more wood shop? Actually ask the question.
So maybe even closeouts could be
And
part
then
of
we
the
could come-
non-lapsing discussion at our meetings each
Right,
month.
and
Is there
then-
anything that we're closing out this month?
Right, then we could come back and say, hey, we talked to David and he says he doesn't need any more supplies for the wood shop. We're going to close it out. Everyone okay with everybody? And or we can say, April needs to buy $5,000 more worth of furniture. We're going to leave on 5,000 and take off the rest. Something like that, I think is what you're looking for.
That would be great. Thank you.
And, and so we can, we'll put it on our agenda to, discuss it once a month and call people and say what's going on.
That's
And
great.
then anything that like the lawn, like the field thing, we can put down below, we'll come up with some name for it, like items under discussion or something.
And Bill, my only other comment is under capital and other projects, you still have under the 5-year plan, the tunnel repair. The town has taken that. So that can come off of our list.
Do we want to put the Chet's discussion?
Turn on your mic.
Do we want to move the fields into that capital? It was reallocated from the capital. Do we want to, for now, it's still something we want to do. We aren't so sure we're going to be able to fund it with non-lapsing, but is that something we want to move back to our capital list? Because I think I'm thinking our thought process was, let's see how the irrigation works with the resurfacing we've done. Does that do a lot of what we're looking for? But is it still down the road something that we're considering? And do we want to, I know they're not looking at current year, obviously, but is it a 5-year thing or?
I do feel like that field piece, it's interesting with the capital because it's one of those where we're hoping we won't need to spend it. But I guess, that's a lot of the capital projects, right? We hope we're not going to need that, but if we would need it, we need to make sure that it's played into that. And so I agree. If we move that to a 5-year, that might be a good timing, even if nothing else, what it does is brings back up the topic for us. So that in 5 years, what we're doing is looking at our fields and saying, do we need to spend the money to resurface them, or did this work and we were able to escape with irrigation as our solution? So
Bill, does that make sense to you to put it back there? Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions or comments on the non-lapsing account?
can I make one more comment on the capital one, or are we doing that in a
Oh,
separate
please
piece?
do. No,
And
do
I
it.
just say, so I'm really stuck on the youth sports fan, just because I love the idea of us saving money long-term for an investment short-term, because to me, that just makes sense. we have 1 year and 5 year. Do we have a next year? Because the 5 year is, okay, this is going to be what we're looking to do, and as a 5 year process where we might save up to it, but do we have a line item where we're saying, hey, this really, the sooner we can pull this off, or if we can do this, it might save us money long-term moving forward. I feel like we have current and then 5 year, and we have nothing in between now and 5 years in the future. And I'd kind of like to see the sports fan move into a 2 year. Yeah, exactly.
I
Like,
could answer that question if you like.
please.
If you look at the 5-year list, and I don't know why we didn't break it down on this chart here, but there's 10 items there. And the first 2 are next year. The next 2 are the year after. The next 2 are the 3rd year. The next 2 are the 4th year, and the last 2 of the 5 are the 5th year. And when I gave it to the town, I spelled that out. So, but we could add that to this list, and that was just, we threw this list together pretty quickly last year, as you remember. But that's when we gave it to the town, we broke the 5-year up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 2 items each in that order.
Thank you. That was, I really would like to see us make steps where what we're looking to do is
Yeah.
make now purchases that will consistently save us in the budget moving forward.
Yeah, and that's why the tunnel repair the town took on for next year, because it was in our year 1, even though.
So tunnel and sports fan were for next year,
Yes.
and now it's just sports fan for next year. Cause I'm really gonna harp on this. This is gonna be my wood chips. And I'm gonna.
Jamie can give you some tips.
Chet, that's a great quote. Okay. Chet's wood chips.
Can I ask one more question on the
Of
capital?
course.
Too? Like, when we're looking at like interactive boards, is that like a one-time $130,000 purchase and then? I mean, do they all need to be replaced at the same time, or is that something where we can do them as needed and maybe we, in our capital budget, have X amount each year for
Yeah.
those kinds of
Yeah,
replacements?
that would be replacing most of them at the same time. However, yes, you could break it up into smaller pieces and do chunks at a time.
As they break, or we're just looking at doing them all as one? Not necessarily
It
as,
depends. We could come up with a plan, a replacement plan, depending on the age of them. But you can just do as they break, but then
Yeah,
it's
can we
not
also-
predictable.
Can we also take into account the amount of time? Like the amount of time that teachers are actually using those
So
boards in
yes,
a way?
actually, glad you asked. So the administrators and I have had this conversation several times. And we are now going to more implement a plan of conversations and observations with teachers about what instructional strategies are going to implement with the interactive whiteboard, or what trainings are they going to commit to using an interactive whiteboard before they get a new one.
That makes a lot of sense, not to just replace them all at the same time.
yeah, and the fact that they're looking at use, I think that's.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay. Troy, should we talk about the budget now?
Can we please? Can I go to the podium?
Yes, please.
Because I just like to be up there. Okay.
Bill, thank you.
And,
This one works.
All right. Hey, look I think it works. This works? Okay. But can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay. So the board gave us some really helpful feedback last time we presented the budget. So thank you for that. So we've added some things based on your feedback. And I'm only going to show you the revised slides or the new slides. So one of the things you wanted to know more specifically and directly
I
was
apologize, Troy. Am I in the wrong? Because this says 28 slides. So if you're only showing us new slides, I may be in the wrong.
some are hidden.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't on the wrong
Yeah,
presentation.
so-
I see one of
some-
28 and I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
no,
if this is only the new
there's
slides, we may be in trouble.
They should be the ones you put. Let's see what happens. Let's go to the next slide. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's great when it works, right? So it worked. All right. So there are some hidden slides between the first and this one here, which is really not the second, but it looks like it's the second. So you asked about return on investment for some of the things that we invested in or we took initiative to get going last year. This wasn't a big investment financially, but it was big impact. And that was reopening the wood shop. And we call the course materials processing. 46 kids have benefited from taking courses down the hall here in the wood shop. And it's been really a great experience. And I'm just going to be quiet and give you a minute so you can read the quotes from these 3 kids. All right, so this is something that's not a big budget item to have happening, and it's great we're able to get it going again. I really appreciate everybody that did it. It's Dave Bradanini and Randy Rumrell really worked on this. Rob actually did some teaching in there this year. He's, I don't know if you know, he's very handy, and he loves that. He loves that. So he can, if you need something fixed, I can give you his cell number. I have it. I can share it with you. Anyway, let's go to the next one. All right. So yeah, there's been big impact in opening the wood shop. In terms of mental health, you know, we added a significant staff member to our mental health team in the form of a counselor at the elementary school specifically. That some of the responsibilities that this person does are listed. There is a lot of overlap with what counselors do or school social workers, school psychologists do. But overall, you know, our mental health team last year was stretched thin. And we talked about that a lot. And remember, I think Rob actually said, this is the hill we're going to die on. And you listened and you didn't let us die because you got us the extra body for our mental health team. And we really appreciate it. And it's had a huge impact. We have manageable caseloads for a social worker and counselor. We have, these are calls, emergency calls we make. The 211 is when a student is possibly in a crisis or emotionally dysregulated. And just, we need more help even beyond the school. And it does happen. And we may have to make those kind of calls or 911 calls. So we still have these things happening. And we were going to compare with last year's numbers, but we're in the middle of the year. It's very difficult to do that in terms of impact, but we feel like our kids are getting the support they need on a more consistent basis, and our staff aren't stretched. You don't have the administration having to pick up the slack or the counselors having to leave their appointments with kids because there's a kid in crisis. We have more people to help kids. So it's helping those individual kids, and it's helping the climate of the schools for everybody, right? So it's a big impact. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, by the way, the counselor at the elementary school also visits every classroom to do lessons in their morning meetings on the core values of respect, responsibility, and resilience. So we're actually, and that's a good example of where our shift. Last year, we were very reactive, and we really have shifted greatly towards the proactive approach because we have enough staff to do it, right? And that's going to help kids before they even have problems, right? So let's go to the next. Oh, this is it. Alternative education. As you know, we piloted the program last year. We have a more of an official program this year over here on this side of the road. We have 13 kids that are in the program either full-time or partially, and it's flexible for kids. They could spend some time on this side of the street and some time on the other side of the street in certain courses, right? It really is fluid based on their needs. We have 7 seniors in the program right now that are on track to graduate. Very likely those 7 kids would have dropped out or would not have graduated. Okay, and the year is still, we still got time in the year, but they're feeling that sense of belonging. They're feeling successful. They have that intrinsic motivation that's building. And if you look at some of these bullet points, and the purpose is that, they may not have thrived in a traditional educational setting, if they're not 100% time. But look at some of the things that we got going on. We have a therapy dog, Molly. We have the Farm Fresh Cafe. I think it's tomorrow. I'm getting a yogurt parfait delivered to me with granola that I ordered. And that program is making that. Earlier on, a couple of months ago, I got a breakfast sandwich. So they're doing things like that, like service kind of things, a real sense of purpose and connecting to the community, the school community. And some of these kids, honestly, have struggled with that kind of connection. So it's a beautiful thing. It really is. All right.
I love this slide, Troy. This has got to be a focus for what you've got going forward. Like this is everything.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's something we're quite proud of. And all of us are very passionate about supporting this program and its ongoing success. And I appreciate the board's support and interest in keeping it going. I think it's huge. And I'm going to stop for a moment just so you can read the quotes from a couple of the kids. I love that part. I want to graduate now. That indicates possibly he did not want that before. Okay, that's pretty powerful. All right, so there you go. You wanted to see some impact, so we gave you some impact. All right, so this slide on technology, you saw it before, but I didn't have numbers on it. But I just wanted to point out some numbers. Remember, Greg did the presentation early in the fall on technology and our status of the technology in the district. And if we were to replace the desktop computers and classroom printers all at once, it would cost all that money, $117,000, right? But we already talked about, we're going to phase out the desktop computers. We're going to go to more teacher laptops. So we're paying for 1 computer per teacher, not 2. They can keep using their desktop, right, until it doesn't work anymore. And the same with the classroom printers. And we're going to transition to cloud storage. And you already heard, it was a great question about the interactive whiteboard. That's another change we're making. We're not just giving people a replacement interactive whiteboard unless they can really prove to us that they're going to use it in an interactive way. Some people, all they need is a projector, right? They don't need a $4,000 smartboard, okay, for their curriculum and their instructional strategies. And you don't need an interactive whiteboard to have innovative instruction either. Right? Sometimes it works better maybe in certain subject areas or certain grade levels to have that interactive whiteboard. Okay, so let's go on. All right, so wanted to point out areas in the budget that are significant savings. And this is, I want to be clear too, because I just talked about the alternative ed program. It's not necessarily connected to this savings here. There can be some overlap, okay? But we are saving money in outplacements. We've had some students who have returned to us this year, and therefore we hope they'll be with us next year. Therefore, we have a savings in tuition for outplacements. But those kids, they're not necessarily spending time in an alternative ed program. They're often in their school building where it's age appropriate for them and getting the services they need there. we're saving on contracted services and transportation next year because we're not transporting kids to other schools as much. And we're not hiring outside services to come in and help with behavior needs like we have done over the last several years as much, because we're reorganizing the special ed program and doing it hopefully better, but more efficiently. Okay, so when we say we're saving this, we really are, but then we're going to use some of the savings to reorganize the special ed program. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And this is part of how we're doing that. We are going to prioritize the assignment of paraprofessionals in the district, and paraprofessionals are really vital to our educational program. It's, each one is another adult that kids can develop a real quality relationship with. And we know that's really important to kids' development, is to have connections with adults. And some kids, because of their needs, need a one-to-one paraprofessional with them. Okay, and it's in their IEP, their special education plan, that states that. So we have to prioritize that. Okay, that's a legal obligation that we have to do. We believe that we will have RBTs, which are registered behavior technicians, which could be paraprofessionals who want this additional training. And it's pretty significant training on how to manage and support kids with their behavior and their motivation. And we contract RBTs from the outside to come in now. So if we can have our own people trained in doing it, okay, and I think possibly more invested, a lot of benefits, more invested in the community. Maybe they've worked here already and now they got the special training. They are now they're actually trained to do things they're called to do anyway now. Sometimes it's all hands on deck, right? And a paraprofessional ends up trying to handle a situation that they're really not trained to do well. But now we'll have people that are. And yes, we did meet with the teachers, the para union. It was a really good meeting. It was a good idea that someone had. I think, Chat, you mentioned it as possibly a good idea to do. So then April talked to me after the meeting and said, "Hey, Troy, you remember, like, we're thinking about doing it this way." I was like, "Oh yeah, thanks for the reminder." And we heard Chat, and so I listened to Chat, listened to April. We got together with the union, and we had a good meeting. So we hope to actually, because this is reallocation in the budget, it is adding a position, but April has a great job description she did for this, and we'd like to put the ad out tomorrow and see what we get, because this might be a hard position to find. The BCBA position, okay, not the RBTs, but you see it says certification maintained and supported by BCBA. That is a position that we would add to the budget, okay, using some of that savings from special ed, because you have to have a BCBA to supervise the RBTs, and we pay an outside BCBA to come in and do the service now. And we end up spending a lot more money than we would if we have an in-house person. Okay, it's part of the reorg of the special ed program. And I think you actually have the job description. We attach it to the packet, didn't we, Irma? Yeah, we attached it to the end of the packet. There's a job description for BCBA and RBT. And so you can look at that. It's quite detailed. There's a lot there. We also want to prioritize having para support our youngest learners in pre-K and kindergarten. And we have 2 pre-K classrooms. So there's 1 para per classroom, and we have 3 kindergarten classrooms. That would be 1 para per classroom there. So this is how we want to prioritize our paraprofessionals. And it might be some other things that we can have paraprofessionals assigned to do. Sometimes it's fluid throughout the year as kids may move in and move out, or kids' needs change, right? So we have to have flexibility and have our paraprofessionals be flexible in changing their assignment throughout the year. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we were interested in this. Someone brought this up about, okay, the ESSER grant. The funds expired. Okay, this is the last year of the ESSER grant. And these are the positions that were funded this school year. On the left side, 3 paraprofessionals, elementary school math interventionist, halftime reading interventionist at the elementary school. And I know this sounds weird, but I'll explain. It's a quarter of a literacy teacher at Wheeler, the middle school, high school. It's really not a quarter teacher. It's a really full-time teacher, but a quarter of her salary was allocated towards the ESSER grant. Okay, so 3/4 of her salary was in the Board of Ed budget. Right, so our plan moving forward for next year is the 3 paraprofessionals. We're going to move them to the IDEA grant. The elementary school math interventionist is in the Board of Ed budget in the salary line. The 0.5 reading specialist is moved to the Right to Read grant, which is a newer grant that we get because Rob and 2 of our teachers are attending the labor intensive professional development all day for like several days. And that's a condition to us getting this grant money. So we can use that to pay for a halftime reading specialist at elementary school. And then the quarter literacy teacher, we're just moving into the budget. All right, so there, ESSER is going away. This is how we're dealing with it. Hopefully that slide is helpful. Okay, let's go on. Let's see where we're at. Oh, yeah. Okay. If you look at, Bill gave us a really nice chart last time that was by like dollar amount, like the most dollar increase to the least dollar increase, the way he did that. And so I just simply took the 4 top increases and put them on a slide. And I labeled them what they are. So it's the regular ed teacher salaries. It's the central office. And by the way, we added the BCBA to the central office salary. And it's the paraprofessional salaries. Remember, the teachers and the paraprofessionals all got new contracts. And then the medical insurance, right, is going up 5.08%. And if we weren't part of the health consortium through Learn in some other towns, they'd probably be going up a lot more. So, and by the way, Bill has been really helpful, and he was on a subcommittee to actually try to reduce our rate in the consortium because we were one of the original members. And so he's made the argument quite strongly, and I've supported it. And it looks like we might get some movement there and them to lower our rate that we pay. Similar to, because there's other school districts that are in there that have similar plans that may be paying a little bit lower rate than us, because when they came in and they look at all of your claims and everything and they determine at that, but we're like, hey, we're a healthy bunch. We want a lower rate. And they're starting to listen, right, Bill? Okay, so when we add up all these, what I'm calling significant increases, we get this number, $569,686. Right? Now, if you look at our total budget, it's $684,423, and the difference is $114,773. So you could look at it, a lot of ways to look at numbers, right? But one way to look at this is say, other than our top 4 categories of increases, which is salaries and benefits, we're asking for $114,000 more in the budget. I think that's a good way to look at it. And then you might say, well, what is that $114? So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you. These are lines that were not in the budget currently, not this year. They're not in the budget. So we put them in for next year because we need them. And it adds up to 138. You might be like, hey, that's not 114 for you. You don't do your math. But remember, it's, it's not, we're saving, $388,000 special education, but we're reorganizing, we're spending some of that money, right? And we're spending some of the other money here. So it's not a 1-for-1 kind of thing. But these are some of the things that we feel like we need to add to the budget. Long-term substitute. We don't really budget for that. We just kind of hope for the best and hope we don't have many needs. Replacement of equipment in the technology. This is the Chromebooks, the teacher laptops. We need to budget for that year after year. By the way, I had a good conversation with Greg Pont, and he believes that if we keep this in the budget, we're going to be able to maintain our level of 1-to-1 for next year. The year after may be a different story, because remember in COVID, we bought a whole bunch of Chromebooks at once and all expiring at once. Okay, so it's not like we could just buy a bunch now and be good. We got to like phase it in. We got to come up with a plan. And we have to come up with a plan that is going to be sustainable in the long term. And that might be cutting back on the level of technology in the classrooms that's currently happening. But we got to examine that. We got to talk about what does the instruction look like at each level that the teachers are now used to having these, and really kind of carefully figure out how can we, not affect student learning, but find a reasonable level that we can sustain that 1-to-1 initiative. But Greg, for this year, feels like if we do this, we'll be okay for the year. We'll come up with a plan of sustainability throughout the year and then budget for that following year. Repair and new equipment. Those are some of the other newer items that we didn't have budget lines for. And so there you go. I mean, that's like a good summary of the whole budget, those 2 slides. Right? All right, let's go to the next slide. And I just pointed out that the town, and you know this, but the town gets revenue because they have a school district here. And it's called ECS money, educational cost sharing money. And that's the amount that they're at least going to get this year. However, there is the governor's budget out there. And actually, I met with Heather Summers and some local superintendents on Monday morning at those tables over there. And Stephanie came by, and we had a good meeting. And Heather Summers says to us, don't worry too much. It's not over. There's the original budget of the governor is never what it ends up being. But they're talking about the educational cost sharing money not going up at all, or not going up much. This is what it was last year. So we're assuming it's not going to go down on this slide. And then you got the tuition money. So that educational cost sharing money, by the way, is still, though, $76,000 higher than what the town budgeted for educational money for the current year. So the town's going to get, if they get that, it doesn't go up. They got this year. But they didn't plan to get this year. They plan to get 76,000 less than that this year when they did the budget, because it's too bad that the state of Connecticut can't do their budget before we all have to do a budget. Because then we could plan more accurately. And wouldn't we all like that? Yeah. Okay. So I should emphasize that. Maybe I put it on the slide. I believe it's $76,103 specifically. But we'll check that. And they might get more. I was really hoping they were going to get more, because when they initially started talking about ECS money, it was like significantly more. It's like 200 and something thousand dollars more. But now they seem to be, it might be backing off on that.
Because something came out on it today and it looked like they were still staying on those projections.
Of the
I-
two.
On the governor's thing just came out today of what he's looking at for 25, and it looked like they were
Okay. I didn't see what came
sitting
out today.
tight with
I'll have to
that.
look for that.
All right.
Oh, boy. That would be great. Go Heather.
Yeah.
Heather Summers.
Can I just ask out of ignorance, the ECS money goes directly to the town and
Yep.
then it gets transferred over?
No.
Not,
doesn't
it's
get
Goes to the
just,
town, stays with the town.
it is just considered to be another piece of our grand list,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's it.
Mhm.
Similar to the
Their
way the
tuition.
tuition, the same way the tuition money goes and.
So
okay.
the town can
Just
feel really good about
clarifying.
increasing our budget. That's how I look at it.
Can I ask one more thing on the governors before
Sure.
we move on? There was also talk about taking off, he wants to take off the cap for regular ed tuition, like for magnet and BOE.
Yeah.
so if there's no cap, we don't know what that number's gonna look at.
So-
Fortunately, we don't have a lot of
Right.
kids going out, but are we looking at
We, d-
putting a buffer in for that
So-
at all?
I actually, Stephanie, I talked a little bit about that. I'm going to add a slide, I think, before we do the Board of Finance, and I can add that information to the slide.
Okay.
Basically, I think it would be adding about $6,000 per kid that we send to a magnet school
Okay,
for us.
thank you.
Is that
But
your
the-
number,
it-
Stephanie?
That is what I heard, but I think that that seems to be one of the things that she feels confident that won't actually roll out to all of us. That there won't be an appetite in appropriations for people to pass that savings on to the districts.
It's not a savings, it would be.
I'm sorry,
charge.
the
That's a
extra,
cost.
the extra expenses
yeah.
onto the districts.
Yeah, because that'd be a really big hit for a district that send a lot of kids out.
No, But I think
Right.
there's, but on the backside of it, there's pieces that they're taking away from the magnet and the VOEG, so they have to make it up somewhere. So by removing the cap, that's where they're.
That's
able
where it's supposed to make it up, right?
So
So
they can't do one without the other.
she didn't think that that was going to come out in the wash.
Okay.
But Troy and I did talk about the importance of emphasizing to the Board of Finance and to the town that when a student opts to attend a magnet or VOAG school, we don't have an option to say, no, you can't go there. And so it's, we have to pay that
Have to,
tuition no matter
choice.
what.
Yeah, no matter how many say they want to go.
Right. And no matter what that tuition is.
And we
Right.
want, and we want to support that because we want every child to be going where they're going, feeling they're getting the best learning.
But even if we didn't want to support it, we don't have a choice.
That's right. Yep. And that's one of the reasons we want to keep our program really strong and attractive here. To try to, because, I mean, yes, kids could benefit from going elsewhere, but a lot of kids can benefit from staying here and they might not even realize it. Sometimes people think the grass is greener and they might go somewhere and then come back because of that. So let's go to the next slide. I want to talk to you about a couple problems we have and a proposal to solve them. One problem we have is we have a very experienced athletic director that's retiring. He's been here a long time and has invested a lot in this community and has been teaching, almost a full load teaching and being the athletic director and is here for like almost, I'll exaggerate, 24/7. Not much of an exaggeration. And to find someone to fill that role, many of us believe is an unreasonable expectation and would be asking someone to have an unbalanced life. Ellen was very passionate about it. She did a great job. But the reality is we're not confident that we would find someone to do that. So that's one problem we have. The other problem we have is we want to make sure that we're providing well-rounded education for all of our kids, right? And that includes academics, that includes arts, that includes sports, that includes clubs, that includes just being social and developing social skills and being emotionally healthy. And we want that for all of our kids. And specifically, though, relating to the athletic director, I want to make sure that we're providing athletic opportunities for the kids that want it. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't because we're trying to field a middle school team with only 7th and 8th graders and there's not enough kids. And we'll be like, okay, well, hey, no girls soccer this year at the middle school level. And what do those kids do? Or, no cross country this year. We don't have enough kids for a middle school team. So we want another option for the kids when that happens. We want to be able to field a team when we can. Okay, when we can field a team but we don't want to just, when we can't, say we're not going to do it. We want to develop a really rigorous, robust intramural program that can complement the middle school activity options for kids. And we think a new AD could take this on and really develop all the opportunities for kids, including focusing on what are the middle school options that we can do. And we could actually use some of the funding, and if you look at the budget, actually, Bill's projections for the end of the year, and if you look at a couple items like middle school transportation, and you look at some of the stipends, it seems as though we're gonna have some money at the end of the year, because we didn't hire that, JV coach, for example, because we didn't need it. There weren't enough kids to warrant it. Okay, so can we reallocate some of that and actually hire a full-time athletic director who can create these opportunities for kids to make sure that all kids can have a athletic activity and develop skills and really develop the skills so that when they get to the high school, if they weren't in a competitive situation already, now they have the skills to be involved in a competitive situation on the high school team. Can we do that? And can they also focus on unified sports program for kids? Whereas that unified sports allows kids with disabilities to participate with non-disabled peers in athletic activities. Can we do that? Can we have someone that is really seeking out more co-op opportunities and having the flexibility when there's an interest in kids? This year, we had an interest in indoor track. So athletic director, I don't know how she found the time, but she created the opportunity to have an indoor track program for kids. And there was at least 18 kids that participated. I went to one of the track meets. Awesome. I was going to bring it. It was my prop. Ellen made me this framed picture of the track team. This is in my office. I'll try to remember it next time. So when there's the interest, we need to be flexible in developing the programming. So I want to be clear with this. We're not saying that, we're actually saying sports are very important. We're not saying that they're not. We're saying that we want to be open to doing it differently so all kids, if they want to participate, can, right? And it doesn't mean we're not going to run a sports team if we have, a bunch of 7th and 8th grade girls that want to play basketball next year. We can run the team. It's just, suppose we have 4 kids and you can't compete. Can we have an intramural program where they can develop their skills so that when they get to high school, or maybe when they get to 8th grade, now maybe there's more people and they can have a team? I think this is part of the reallocation. I mentioned it last time. And I'm just trying to give you a few more details of how this could work. If we had a full-time athletic director that is really, they're focusing on Wheeler, grades 7 through 8. And that's one school. And there's a difference in requirements whether you're a district AD or a school AD. And if you're a school AD and Wheeler is one school, what you need is a coaching permit, first bullet there, and you need a teaching certification. Doesn't have to be PE health. It could be history, it could be math, it could be school psychology. Okay, did we increase the applicant pool dramatically by having a school AD and not a district AD? One might say like, hey, why don't we have grade 6 kids come up? The difficulty with that is the schedules of the schools, and we don't want to have kids missing part of their school day or trying to start their school day early and all that. I think we're open to looking at that kind of thing in the future, but I think to have the schools on the same calendar would make it easier. But then really what you have is a district AD that needs the 092. It's an administrator. The salary is probably higher to get someone with that qualification. So there's a job description in your packet of an AD. And it's pretty substantial. We're asking the AD to do more than our current AD does, because this AD might not teach at all, although they may. It depends on how the schedule lines up and what they're certified to teach. we're saying preferred PE health, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, it could be any teaching certification. We just want someone passionate about creating athletic opportunities for kids, no matter what they are, whether it's intramurals or sports. And we believe we can do all this within the budget that we had this year. And well, we actually have in the budget this year, we have everybody employed, all teachers are employed now. We roll over into the budget, okay, for next year. So we have money in the budget for the current person, okay, and the AD stipend, which is part of the teacher's contract. So if we believe we hire a person who would be in the teacher's contract, who would get the AD stipend as well. We just put them in a teacher's contract on the step they would be based on their experience, like any teacher. It's just that we try to have them not teach if we can, so they can focus on the athletic opportunities for kids. And we will have money left in the budget, we believe, to hire a person to replace the PE health teacher. And we think that we can make this work. Okay, without really an increase in the budget. Remember, all the increases in the budget are mainly salaries and benefits. I showed you on the slide, and technology items mainly. This is a reallocation, and we think we have an opportunity to do it when we solve two problems. We solve the problem of replacing a really dedicated ADP teacher, and we solve the problem of some kids not getting the athletic experiences that they want. So there's our thoughts on athletic director, and really it's a reallocation. Let's go to the next slide, and we're almost done. You saw the slide last time, but we added a couple things here. Long range capital working group. There's a meeting going on tomorrow on that. And you know that the town recreation department uses our school buildings quite a lot, especially the elementary school. We have not charged them any custodial fees, and we're going to continue to try to not do that. But we do want a custodian there when they're in the building. Okay, that didn't always happen, but we need to protect our assets, and that's like if a toilet overflows, when there's an activity going on, we need someone like dealing with it right away so it doesn't become a big flood. And that's one of my favorite examples because it happened to us in the central office last year. So there's that. And then the next slide, I threw this in here. It's a new one. I like to say, hey, isn't it nice not to be Griswold? I bet you're glad, right? I'm not the Griswold superintendent talking to you right now. I'm the North Stonington superintendent talking to you right now, and I'm only asking for 4.51%. All right, doesn't that make you happy? It makes me feel really fiscally responsible. Yeah, so that's it. That's what I got, and then we'll take questions.
Do we want to just start at Chet's end of the table again?
I might take Griswold off of there if I were you, Troy, because over 150 of their high school students are tuition out of Norwich and Preston. So the amount of money that actually comes into their district from out of their tax base is so massive that an increase like that may be offset.
Okay, so not a fair comparison.
And again, the other ones are very fair comparisons.
Okay,
I would
thank
just Griswold is one that you
Right.
may just want to reconsider and throwing in there, because if people are aware of the way that the towns are currently run in terms of their school districts, that one is one where
Can
There-
I pick on East Lyme?
go for it.
Okay.
Pick on East Lyme, just pull Griswold out of there because of the fact that they're
thank you.
bringing in over $1 million
Okay, thank you.
just in tuition.
Good input.
So quick, I have a couple of questions. I have a variety of questions. I I love the idea of a full-time AD. I think that in the world that we live in, that's something that happens in most districts, and it's a thing that's kind of it borderline a requirement. And I get that we're a small district, but it doesn't, like, we're offering so many things for our students in terms of sports at this point that I think that a full-time AD is in my mind something that's just it's a requirement in the way that we have to run things now. The amount of things that come into play regarding athletics. I'm a little concerned about the focus on that slide on intramural sports in the middle school as opposed to interscholastic sports in the middle school. I know that just a couple years ago we switched into a more competitive, you know, group that we compete with. Our conference is far more competitive at the middle school level.
Yep.
And I still see things like the fact that our girls basketball team made it to the finals in that incredibly competitive environment. And I love to see that success from our kids. And I would hate to consider that what we're thinking in our head is to move to that intramural, because I know it may save money, but if we have 4 kids who go out for a basketball team, do we really improve their ability to be competitive by having them play 2-on-2? I guess the way that looks to me, just, yeah, I would love to see that what we're pushing for is continued competitive interscholastic sports with that full-time AD, because I think that we have a town that is dedicated to athletics, that we've seen that more than 2/3 of our high school students are involved in interscholastic sports, and that we want to be pushing that as a process moving forward, because I do think that it builds community, it builds positive points of view regarding our district, and I think that's important.
Yep.
But I mean, I also know that we struggled to get some teams together this year, and so that balance I think needs to be found. New budget items, long-term sub for $60,000. Is that different? So we have building subs now, correct?
Yeah, we do.
So the long-term substitute is a separate line item for building substitutes. So we'll have building substitutes and then also access to somebody new who, if we have somebody going on maternity leave or going out on FMLA, that would be that replacement as opposed to the building sub.
Yeah, that's one possibility of it. The other possibility is, we're trying to have more curriculum writing time. And we're trying to free up our current curriculum coordinator to do that work with teachers. And it's possible if we have that, and if we don't have a lot of needs for, a long-term sub for maternity leave, or someone who's injured or something, we might be able to use some of that to free up our curriculum coordinator to help people write curriculum
Are-
right before the
are-
mask visit.
I
So-
mean, are we considering this to be a building sub as well, but just renamed? I guess I'm confused by
Right.
the difference between long-term substitute versus
Yeah,
building
we
sub.
don't know yet. We don't know. We just know that we have, we know we usually don't budget for this. And we've had a lot of leaves this year. And we want to have like a safety net. So we're not quite sure. We want to have that safety net in case we need to have a leave. Or Bill, you want to speak on this?
Well, I guess I would just follow that up with the idea that I mean, generally speaking, $150 a day in terms of a long-term sub, if we had that for the entire school year, it looks like, so how many long-term substitutes are we talking about at $60,000?
So someone goes out on maternity January 1st, third grade teacher wants to be out for the rest of the year. That's usually what happens. Very few people go out for just the 12 weeks. So we need to find a certified person. Well, we try to really find a certified person, and we pay them more because they're going to be in there for the whole term or whatever. And so in the past, and I've had this same problem in other school districts, is no one ever thinks about it. They think, well, it's in the sub line. Well, the sub line is like you said, the daily subs. You're out, someone covers for you. Tomorrow you're out, someone covers for you. They're getting $125. So, and if you notice in the past, we're always over budget on in the sub line or under budgeted. We always go over. And why do you always go over? Because you never put in the budget for maternity leaves, or even this year, we have someone who's out on a long-term medical leave who has 180 sick days. So we know we need to, so I'm just trying to put some money in to cover that stuff that happens every year, you know, and we always seem to be short. No, it's not a building sub. They're hired specifically to replace a teacher who's on leave. They're
So,
not hired every day. They're not there. We hire them to replace a teacher specifically.
all right, so let me ask you this, so it's the idea of if we need a long-term sub, this line item is available to pay a long-term sub in case it's needed.
Correct.
So if I were out for 180 days and I were going to get paid, $150 a day, which is beyond what a normal sub for a long-term sub for the entire year, that would end up at, let's see, 18 plus not $27,000. So there's two of these. Our expectation is that there would be at least two
Well, once
people gone for an entire year's worth of time.
we pay
on them.
$250. They get a
Oh, we
BA
pay
one.
250 for the long-term sub?
It's a BA,
Okay.
Contract.
it's a BA one
Okay.
for the contract
All right,
after 40 days.
after 40 days.
Yeah.
All right, so you make me do more math. I'm terrible at math. I'm a language teacher.
Yeah, well-
So the idea is about 1.5 people. So it would be the equivalent of having a teacher and a half, or a teacher out for an entire year and another out for half a year.
Yes. So the number is somewhat arbitrary, yeah.
Is that somewhat on par with what we've had happen over the past couple of years?
Well,
It just seems like it seems like a big jump in terms of the total amount of money, and I'm
and
just trying to
it-
figure out where we got 60,000.
It's, well, the number was just sort of one person, right? So this year, we're spending more than that on long-term subs for
All right.
people who are out on medical leave, maternity leave, or whatever kind of leave they're out.
Okay, and this would, sorry, I'm just wrapping my head around it. So the idea would be, so this year we've spent more than 60 grand just on long-term subs outside of our sub budget item.
Correct.
Do we consistently do that? Do we know, like, is that this year because it's a strange year, or is that the past 3 years we've had similar numbers? Do we? Okay.
We always have people out on maternity.
Right. And I guess I'm just trying to, $60,000 more than what we've ever spent just seems big. And it may just be that it's a reallocation from other areas. And in the past, we've taken money from other places to cover it. I guess I'm just trying to figure out exactly how that works in. Well, and don't get me wrong, I want to fund these because I also know, Rob, you end up in classrooms at times, and you shouldn't. You have plenty to do.
We know of a definite one that's coming up next year.
All right.
Well, so the number is a little bit arbitrary.
It always has to be on some level, right? But I guess if you're going to put that out there, when it comes to when we present this to the Board of Finance and they see $60,000, I think what you want to be able to say is, over the past 3 years,
Okay.
we
I
have
can-
spent this much money. I guess I would just say that moving forward, that would be a number that if I were a Board of Finance member, I might look at $60,000 and say, where did this come from? In terms of the number.
All right, we'll get statistics on it. That's what you're
All right.
looking for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, well, first I needed to figure out what exactly it was, and then I wanted to get statistics moving forward. So,
So hang on one sec. Christine, can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think it really goes to chat your point, which is what's going on now currently and how is that reflected in our current budget?
So long-term subs now are just in the substitute line, is that correct? In which according to our balance sheet, we've still got 36,000 in that substitute line, but we're projecting we need 60,000 more. And then to Chet's point and back to kind of what Troy was saying, somehow curriculum coordinator fell under that. And that's, I'd like to know a little bit more about that and what's going on there. I feel like long-term sub isn't really talking about filling maternities. We're now talking about freeing up more time for the curriculum coordinator. So what are we really doing with this 60,000? And can we get it a little more solid, a little deeper understanding?
Yeah,
especially
we could-
considering that curriculum director, we have a stipend position that should be entirely done outside of school hours if that's falling in. But, yeah, all right. Okay. Moving on.
More
Thank you.
specifics, okay.
To address Chet's first concern about the intramural sports, so if you could chime in at some point.
Oh.
Oh, of course.
Sorry, when
Chet,
I
can
don't,
you find?
when I don't have the Zoom up, I can't see.
Can you hear me?
I'm totally failing at this. Hold on a second.
We can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to jump in a little bit to Chet's point about middle school sports. I don't think anybody's sitting around and thinking that, you know, we want to not have middle school sports, but the reality is since sixth grade did go back to the elementary school, our middle school sports have suffered. Ellen has worked really hard to try to create opportunities. That means recruiting kids that oftentimes who don't typically play the sport. I think the idea behind this is more to try to build skill-based programming so that we can still have a theater program. It doesn't mean we wouldn't run the sport if we had that demand, but I just want to point out our girls basketball team that did do so well consists of all 8th graders and 1 7th grader. So next year we now have 1 student, and looking up at the number of kids coming, this is where we fall short when they enter the high school and those numbers go back down. So I just think this was the way to look at building a program, but not kind of streamlining it so that we're forcing these teams and these trips to Woodstock and far away where really we don't have the kids and the manpower to make these experiences positive for our kids. I know right now it looks like we have a lot of boys in our boys basketball program. We do. Many of them have never played basketball before, but they wanted to try the opportunity. So I think we're trying to do a little bit of both here and build programming, but maybe not at the level where we used to when we had 6, 7, and 8 in the same building.
Thank you, Kristen. Chet, do you want to keep going with your questions?
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to dominate, and I don't think I have that many more. So a BCBA is an administrative position or an at-will position, or where does that fall?
It's going to be, it's going to be a employee of the district, but it'd be not in the teacher's contract. It'd be a separate.
So so it'll be at will.
employee.
It's so we would negotiate an at-will contract with the BCBA, but they would fall within central, because I was just
Yes.
curious because it was under central office
That's right.
salaries.
It's
And so
because it's
I-
a district position and, yeah, and it's in central office because it would be more of a at-will employee
All right.
that we negotiate with.
The right to read grant how is that renewed? Is that an annual renewal? Is that an ongoing, do we have expectation that would maintain, or is that
Do you know?
is it a 3-year grant? Is it a 5-year grant? It's a 1-year grant. Okay. So we have it for that reading specialist for next year, or interventionist for next year, but then we would have to readjust. Okay. Good. That does me. And Kristen, please, I hope you know, I really do support the process with the programming and the sports. I want that to be what we give our students. I don't want it to move away from the idea of trying to gain interscholastic experience coming in there. I want it to be a fallback and not a, you know, and not a goal, I guess.
I get it. No, I understand that.
Jamie?
So overall, I think this is really great. I like your presentation. I think really focusing on the to investments and I think the fact that we're doing things in-house is really positive. And if we can even highlight that even more of the savings, like, so I guess on that significant savings, like, is there any way, like, we could just kind of break it down maybe a little more in a sentence? Like, cause I think that that's really powerful to be like, look at what we're doing.
Mhm.
And I think that in-house is great. I did have a question about the idea grant. So I'm assuming that's the grant that we get every year, correct? But you feel confident that moving forward beyond this year that we'll have the opportunity to still fund those 3 paras, or are they going to need to come back at any point onto our budget?
The idea grant is we get every year, we've gotten it forever. So we can decide where the money goes, but currently we are putting the money to salaries in the grant.
But it wasn't in years past, right? Because
It moves around
okay.
because, and you know, well, COVID grants threw everything off because we started moving money all over the place. Usually people use the ED grant for cover salaries and part of the, maybe some tuition or transportation for special ed students. But
Okay.
mostly, usually Title I and IDA, most of the money usually goes to salary.
Okay. So
Without all this COVID stuff that threw everything.
okay. So it's just I just don't want to see that go up next year, right? As a
It's not
position.
coming, it's not coming back.
Right. Okay. So they're going to be there for a while. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Or they'll come out and something else will go in there.
gotcha. Okay. I think that's really all I have for. Oh, and thank you for putting the breakdown of the wood chips of the playground. I appreciate it. I like to see that there. So thank you.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd like to echo the Jamie's comments. I think the presentation is spot on. I like the way it's kind of presented. It was easy for me to follow through. I'm still going through the numbers. I'm looking at anything that wasn't budgeted in the past, like the long-term subs, and I'll probably ask some follow-up questions at some point in time. The staffing, I always like to kind of see how is that trending in the last couple of years versus what you're looking at.
In terms of numbers of staff,
Yeah.
I think we're really the same. We're budgeting the same except for the BCBA, which would be an additional person on staff. And then, of course, the athletic director would be another, because we're looking to take that position and make it to 1 athletic director, 1 PE health teacher. So really, we're looking to go up 2 people on staff.
That's the 143.5, right?
Yeah, that's the total number of staff on the staffing chart.
Well, I'm just looking at,
BCBA. Dollars.
Yeah,
Well,
but in terms of staffing chart, which we don't have the
Gotcha.
dollars on that chart,
Gotcha,
it's just
gotcha.
numbers of people doing the roles.
okay. And on the AD, what was,
It's in the budget narrative. The
Is it?
staffing chart, no? It's on page 12 of the budget narrative. We're talking about the number of people doing each of the roles. So BCBA, we actually listed separate, so you could see it, even though, so that isn't, we're not putting the budget numbers on the staffing chart. We're just telling you the number of people doing each role. So you can see BCBA is listed about halfway down.
Yeah.
Number of them, 1, right? And then registered behavior technicians, 3. But we believe like 3 of our current paras may fill those roles, right? So we're not changing the overall number of staff there for the BCBA. And then, of course, we have the athletic director, 3rd from the bottom. So really, it would be going up those 2 people, athletic director and BCBA. So that's how it's trending up.
So 19 is 3 fewer paraprofessionals than you had this year. So right now it's 22, and we'll go down to 19 paraprofessionals, 3 RBTs.
And what was the budget for the AD that you had? I couldn't really find it.
We were kind of looking at we were looking at the current, person and rolling that salary over. And then, but knowing that, we may find an applicant, the best applicant that is lower on the teacher's contract. So there could be some savings depending on who we hire there. We don't know yet. We think it's going to be quite an attractive opportunity for people once we put it out. Because really all you need is a coaching license and a teaching certification in any subject and you're qualified. And
So-
if you have the interest. So we don't yet know until we hire the person and find the right person, what it'll be. But in terms of what we are budgeting for, we just are budgeting for the person who's currently in the job. Plus the stipend.
Yeah, because
The stipend itself? The sti-
yeah, is it
Okay,
12,
so,
is it
so-
12,000 or is it
Bill,
something
The
else?
stipend's 12,000. The stipend's 12,000.
Right, so that's going to be the position for the new AD, full-time
Well-
AD, or?
it would be good.
so it depends.
What is it?
So if a current teacher in the school, someone say teaches social studies says, I want the job. All they get is their salary plus the stipend. Now we hire a replacement. So now we're there, so the cost is the replacement, which would be someone at an MA3. But if the person took the job as that top step, we're saving 30,000 on the position. See, so it depends on who takes the job, what the cost. So the AD could be the same as what we're paying Ellen. There's no change if a current teacher takes the job. So
So
it
that-
could be less if it's a lower step teacher.
Okay, so you're using Ellen's salary
So
right now
Ellen,
as your budget.
yeah,
item.
Ellen makes 105,000.
Yeah, I recall that, right. Okay, so
So
105K
That's
is your,
salary plus stipend.
Right. So you sort of reallocate that depending on, hopefully you're hiring, especially a phys ed teacher, hopefully would be at you can get a physical education teacher at a lower step.
that's a lot of money, 112, 105 plus 12K, is that,
No, that's with the stipend.
okay.
She's an MA 14.
Is there a job description on that?
Yeah, it's attached
Okay.
it's in your packet.
Okay, I'll take a
I
look
think
at
it's
it.
the last thing in your packet.
Okay, that, for this point, until I can go through it some more, that's all I got, yeah.
Lisa?
I have a few questions. First, I wanted some clarification on the long-term sub for the $60,000. Is the driver for that to free up curriculum coordinator? I thought I kind of heard that, but I also heard that the $60,000 long-term sub is strictly for LOAs or for leave of absences for
It really,
teachers.
it could be either. It could be either.
Okay, so would the long-term sub be used irregardless to, would they come to work every day? Or is this just when the curriculum coordinator needs to be freed up to work on curriculum? You know, is it just a variety of things? Is it one person? Or is
No,
it just a line item that could be many many
it's a
different?
line item that could be
subs?
line item that could be many people.
Okay, okay.
We're not hiring anybody to take that position unless we need specifically someone to replace somebody who's out on leave. At the moment, that's the plan. That's the.
But that, to replace somebody who's out on leave or to be used for to free up time to work on curriculum or other things that you may need to replace the teacher?
I think we need time to come up with more details about that for you.
Okay,
I think we
thanks.
gotta go back to the drawing board on that and come up with a more detailed answer for you.
Okay, and with the athletic director, I had, the job description is really extensive.
Yes, thank you.
No, it's great. So with the athletic director, so that would be it could possibly be a stipend, like a teacher could say, I would like this position. Would they still teach
No, they wouldn't-
history
they
or
probably
whatever?
wouldn't
And
teach
then
anymore, they may teach a subject, a class or something if we needed them to.
but their
but
primary
that-
responsibility would be the,
The goal would be to get them to not teach and focus completely on the athletic opportunities for the kids.
okay, that's what I thought, but then
That's
I
the
was
goal.
confused. I was confused
Yeah,
with
that's
the
the goal, but-
$12,000 stipend.
But,
what-
you know, depending on, they have to have a teacher certification,
Mhm.
and there may be a time we need them to teach a course. And we want, and that's why we have that in the job description, that they may have to teach. But our goal would be that they're not, so they're completely focusing on the programming.
Okay.
And
if-
if I can jump in, Lisa, I'm sorry, I'm listening to this. We did a very extensive look last year at what ADs are typically making, how many of are teaching, how many are not teaching. And Chet's right, that trend of ADs teaching a full load and being an AD, that's gone. It's been gone a long time. In fact, most ADs are just that. They are full-time ADs. So I think the stipend is just coming into up to raise that up a little bit, because if you look at the average salary right now, what an AD makes, it is between about 105 to 135,000, I would say, and that's just an AD position. So we're trying to look at reallocating so we can get that number up without raising the budget by using the money that's in there. So that's where the stipend comes into play.
Okay, thank you for the clearer understanding there. So next I just have a couple comments. Your presentation is awesome. I would really like to see, I mean, you have highlighted, the return on the investments with regards to the mental health and alternative ed and the materials, et cetera. I'd really like to see more emphasis on what revenue we bring to the town. And I'm saying this because we're still asking for a 4.51% increase, which sitting at this table, it's easy for me anyway to absorb the need for that increase. But when we go to the Board of Finance in the town, we really have to justify that need and emphasize on those things. Last year was the year of the bump.
This was the
And-
year of the plateau.
It was the year of the bump. The last year was the year of the bump, because we.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wrong. It's
And
the
so,
plateau.
so we did, so, I mean, I heard your comment at the last meeting, which says, oh, and that's honest. That was honestly our year of the bump, but we found that, that brought us level, really.
Mhm.
And so now we need this to maintain, that level. So
Mhm.
I'm just always thinking of ways just to justify the 4.51%, because I think most residents, they're going to see it's a 4.51% increase and they'll stop listening. So we have to
Right.
speak loudly to the return on the investment.
So I should hide the 4.5
No,
until that very
no.
end.
No, I don't think you should hide anything. I'm just saying that's,
Yeah, I
that's
hear
what
ya.
the taxpayers are going
know.
to see. And so we just
Yeah.
have to just really
I know.
stress on the return
Yeah.
of their investment,
Right.
and,
Yes. So the revenue to the town, it's more than just financial dollars coming in. But it is indirectly, it's the real estate values and just the quality of the town services and all that. So maybe.
and
maybe
the
I can
quality of
add
the product that's graduating for the high
the
school.
Product,
the-
the
the-
product, the vision of the graduate.
Yes.
Yeah. The
All of
pride
that.
the community.
all of that.
How many of them went through Wheeler High School and elementary school? And want quality experience for the young residents of the town. I'll work on it.
No, I know you will.
Yeah,
I
thank
just
you.
wanted to make comment because I
Thank you. That's
like
good.
I
That's
like
good.
this budget, but if we want this budget, we just have to keep on emphasizing
Yep.
and highlighting.
Thanks, Lisa. Christine?
I'll go quick. Just a couple of quick things. as we always talk about transparency, I think we need to be really clear. I agree with the athletic director position. We're going to be adding about $75,000 in salary because somebody's either going to have to teach PE or teach, even though we're bringing them in as teacher, it's been made pretty clear they're not teaching. So,
Right, yeah.
So
we'll have a
somewhere we're
separate
picking.
person as a
right.
teacher. Yep.
So we've got about 19,000 in balance in stipends right now that aren't getting used. I'm assuming that's part of the number where we think we're going to pick some up. But when you do the number of what Ellen's making as a teacher, subtract out some stipends, we're looking at about $73,000. We need to be really clear about that. It's not a wash. It's going to cost us some money. I think it's definitely worth every penny, but I think we need to be really clear about that. Because we are going to need to fill either a PE position, or if as a social studies teacher wants to do this, we still have to fill that social studies teacher's position because the goal is to not have this person teaching. So if we can
Okay.
get some clarity on that.
So yes, we could actually, we could guesstimate what it's going to cost to hire a PE health teacher. But
Right.
it's a guesstimate because we don't know who the applicants are going to be.
Well, of
and
course,
what
and
the experience are.
that's
But we could pick a high probability number off the teacher contract.
just like we would with
So
any
we could
teaching
give you a
position.
more exact number, more accurate prediction of
Yes,
the numbers.
I think we need to
Yeah,
have
you
a
need
line
that?
item for the PE teacher of what we anticipate that's
Okay.
going to cost.
We could do that. Yep.
I again would like to know more about the long-term sub. We're trending not over budget too much right now on subbing, so I'm not sure. We need to see more on that.
Okay.
We're going to want to show what is it going to look like if we can't get 4.5%. That's what they're going to ask us.
Oh.
So we need to have a scenario of what are we going to cut out of this to get to, I don't know what the board feels, but 1.5 or 2 or whatever the Board of Finance is going to come back to say, what does it look like? They're going to want to see it. And I think we want to show it up front instead of doing back and forth between meetings.
Yeah, we talked about that at the tri-board.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they wanted. that.
So little things I'm thinking about is how much does the custodial cost run us to supply it for rec when they're here? I mean, is it nominal or does it make a difference? Because they are supposed to pay for it. If we've got overtime going into play on that, or is it just a few dollars and it really doesn't make a difference?
It's a few dollars and it doesn't make much of a difference.
Okay.
The nice thing about that as well is that it's showcasing our school as a town asset to people who might not have students in the school, which I think is of benefit to us. If perhaps you're playing in that men's basketball league at night, you might not have a kid in the school, but the fact that nobody's charging that team to be there, it
Yeah, I
shows
just
us as-
didn't know. I mean, if we're getting down to
Oh, for sure.
to the wire on money, where do we find savings? And,
Right.
but if it's nominal, then I'm not concerned. It's just a thought. So that would just be my only thing is we need to be prepared ahead of time for what does it look like if we can't get it. I think it's a great budget. I think everything in it is worthy of the ask. You guys are doing an amazing job. I would support this school to the moon and back. So thank you for all of your hard work for sure. And I'm hoping that we can continue to get the support of the town for this budget.
Judy, welcome to your first budget cycle, by the way.
I don't know if I'm going to make people happy with this. When we were talking about a full-time athletic director and how it's trending upwards, that's the way schools are going. Are we comparing them to schools our size? I mean, I feel like we have a really small school and I feel like, is that really something necessary for a school our size? And I don't know if Christine can answer that. I see Chet. I don't know if you have an answer or if you.
I was just gonna say,
Okay.
yes, I guess I can tell you pretty clearly that yes, schools our size and even smaller have teachers who are teaching maybe a class a day and being an athletic director. It's not the idea of having somebody who is just on a stipend doing an athletic director position at this point is, I don't really know a school. I mean, you've got when you look at schools similar in size to us, like Turlotte or Lyman Memorial and things like that, like they have full-time ADs, or they have an AD who is nominally teaching, not somebody who's putting in a 0.6 as a teacher and doing this as a stipend. It's a ton of time
She's
and
at
headaches.
every event. I mean, she
It-
was
it's
at
massive.
gymnastics. She's at every
Yep.
co-op.
Well,
game.
and comparing to
She's
Ellen
at-
is impossible. Like, we're never
I
gonna
know, but
get.
that's what we're
And in
looking.
the in
Yeah.
the winter time, I think it's important to point, she's teaching all day and winter sports and games go until 9 at night. So she is in essence in the building from 6:30 till 9:30. And that's the entire winter season because there's also late practices. So it is a very long day. So most ADs, when they are standalone, will come in later in the day in the winter season. So they might come in at 11 o'clock, knowing they're in that building until 10 that night. So the schedule becomes a lot more flexible. But with Ellen, she's teaching all day and doing this.
Gotcha. Thank
And
you.
the ECC and the CIAC also take a ton of your time. I mean, they have a variety of, it's a ton of time.
I'll just, the size of the school has nothing. We have every sport that Ledyard has or East Lyme has except for football. We have just as many sports, just as many schedules to do, just as many reps to hire, just as many scorekeepers to get, just as many home games. So that's not the size of the school, it's the number of sports, and we have a lot of sports. So.
And I think keeping kids in district, a big piece of that is our athletic program. It's not just about getting Preston and Volantown kids, but somebody said it earlier, it's about keeping our kids and encouraging them to choose our high school as a school of choice, which is happening so much more than it used to happen.
Thank you for that. And I do have some questions about the long-term sub, but I feel like you're going to come back to us
Yes.
with more information on
We're
that.
gonna come
So
back, yeah.
we're just going to leave that for now.
So I just have a couple of comments. Troy, great job adding the slides. I think that you all took our feedback from last time about the impact of the wonderful things that you're continuing to do, but also the things that we started last year. I thought it was really powerful for the Board of Finance last year to hear about what would happen if we didn't have those things. And so helping them to understand what's happened because we have had those things. I think is really powerful, and not just to the Board of Finance, but to the rest of the town. I think that's really wonderful. I think I'd like to see more about what this curriculum coordinator's impact has been. When I sat with Rob and Allison and Kristen and April, and we talked about it, they talked so much, Kim, about the impact that you have had on what's going on in the schools. I think that people need to know that. I didn't understand.
Yeah, I can speak to that too. I really see my role as a lot more of a teaching and learning role, which is something a lot of districts, even our size, do have in terms of teacher development, supporting teachers on plans, bringing forward the goal of innovative instruction. It's a lot more than sitting and just revising curriculum. It's actually meeting with all of those teachers constantly, helping to implement all of the new right to read materials with HMH in the elementary school, and doing math needs assessments, and really trying to get our kids the best possible programming and get our teachers equipped to do that and moving them forward, I think is something that I'm really focusing on more than the written documents. So it's more getting all of that into the document, but the legwork is elsewhere. I mean, Troy and I are presenting to the district and all the teachers on Friday about innovative instruction, and then we have follow-up activities for the rest of the year, guiding professional development and just really trying to get our instruction where it should be.
And then I think focusing on what the long-term impact of that will
Mhm.
be. I mean, Rob talked about like once everyone's caught up, what that will mean in the long term. And Troy, you talk in the narrative about the NEASC stuff, which I think is great. But I think it doesn't speak to what that really means to the students and how they're learning and what they're learning. And for the teachers, getting this instruction about how to do their instruction, I think is really important. So I'd
Yeah.
love to see more
Mhm.
on
And,
that.
yes, NEASC is a piece of it, but it's much bigger than that. It's more impactful for our students, not just to have the stamp of approval and accreditation. There's like a real student direct impact. So I think we'll definitely put that in there.
That's great. Thank you.
I gotta say that Kim Haggerty has been really helpful in putting this PowerPoint together. And I've also had other people contribute, April, Rob, and Kristen. But April, Kim, really just kind of jumped in and did a lot of this work. She's like highly capable of doing a lot. And it is a big impact on the district. And if you talk to any teachers who she has helped, I think you would get the same message.
Well, I think we should be telling that message to everyone. So that's great. The long-term sub stuff, I agree, just needs a little more detail. And then I think what maybe we're experiencing here tonight with our board is indicative of what we're going to hear from the Board of Finance and then the community as a whole about the athletic director. It's a huge shift. Ellen has been around for a long time and she's been doing it and making it work for so long. Kristen's right. We can't replicate that. I don't, we're just never, we're not going to be able to. And so it has to be different, but I think that we have to really get out front and talk about the differences in a way that people can understand it. I think clarification about how much this really costs is going to be important. And even though we're not sure because of the way you're going to hire, by not talking about it, it maybe feels like we just don't want to talk about it, which is not the truth. And I just think we're going to have to be ready. Chet, the first time I heard this idea, I thought the same thing. Does this mean we're cutting middle school sports? We don't want to cut middle school sports. That's a horrible idea. But then Kristen explained it to me, her ideas about really the development and providing the kids who don't have a team, like we haven't had a middle school girls softball team. And so how do we help those middle school girls who don't have enough people for their team? What's that robust program? I agree with you. A robust program isn't letting 4 girls who want to play basketball play 2-on-2 all season. That's not robust. So I'd be looking to see what we can really do. But I think that we have to be really clear that no one's looking to deny a child an opportunity in middle school to play sports, but instead to make that a better experience. I think, because I really didn't think about that the first time we talked about it either. So those are all of my comments, but I think now we have to talk about where we go from here. Alex, you had mentioned you wanted to look through it a little more and provide some feedback, but our time is getting short for when we need to vote to move this to become our budget. Our presentation date with the Board of Finance is March 13th. So as we sit now, we only have our next meeting prior to that presentation. However, we may choose to create one additional meeting because March 13th is also our regular Board of Education meeting. But I think if we have feedback for Troy about what he needs to change in order to get us to a place where we can adopt it, we probably should get him that feedback sooner than later so that we could take maybe our first try at trying to approve a budget on the 28th. Anybody have thoughts on that? Well, we could either use the 28th as that budget meeting and then schedule a meeting maybe on March 12th before this is presented to the Board of Finance on March 13th to have our regular Board of Ed meeting and then to approve this. So that would be what we talk about a little bit later. So we would still have the 2 meetings that we should probably have.
Is it possible to do a Wednesday just because I teach at nights now on Tuesdays?
So the problem is that the Board of Finance has now grabbed all of the Wednesdays. And the month that it's really problematic is in March because all of those Wednesdays will likely at least include Troy and myself in those Board of Finance meetings when you look at their budget timeline.
If we do budget only at the next meeting, we're basically losing that next meeting. Like we have a presentation that we usually do and other work that we try to do. And then we're also losing the 13th as a meeting. I'm just, and if Wednesdays are better, I'm wondering if we just do a budget dedicated meeting maybe next week on a Wednesday, it's still February. And then we can come to our regular meeting on the 28th or whatever that date is. I don't have it exact.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest the 28th for, sorry. Yeah, if we could meet on the 21st.
So you would prefer that to doing a meeting?
The night before, if there's any change, it's very hard also for the central office to go back and have to crunch numbers and put it together and change it and get it ready for presentation in 24 hours.
So we would be looking to have the work done on the 28th and the approval.
Well, why couldn't we do the work?
Work on the 21st.
And get the
And the
approval?
Let's
28th would be
check
the approval.
The town calendar. So
The Board of Finance
The
has
Board-
an appointment on.
they are
2nd.
meeting and they're meeting in this room. So we could do a couple of things. We could do Zoom only. We could
We could do
look
it
to
in
meet
person across the street.
in meeting room
Elsewhere.
2. In this room right here.
We could do it across the street.
We could, I mean, and there's Zoom capability over there, right?
Not.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do an in-person across the street though. And I mean, that's, you can call a in-person special meeting and have it be there.
And we can record it, I guess.
So the only reason why I would like to see it on Zoom is that if we're talking about the budget in depth,
Yeah.
I think that that's good work for people to see us doing. And I don't,
What time is the Board of Finance?
it's
meeting?
at 7.
How early could we meet? Could we meet at 5:30 and be done by 7? I mean, that's an hour and a half.
Of just budget work.
I could.
Jamie, you can, that early. Alex, is that a problem for you? So if that's the only thing on our agenda is budget,
Yeah.
and we just have we have a hard stop at 7. That works for everyone?
I think also if we come in, I mean, if people have specific things that they would like to see from Bill or
Be ready.
Troy, like that can be an email so that they can come in
Absolutely.
with all those numbers, with the different breakdowns and how it might work. And that way, when we come in, it can be a relatively quick process. It doesn't have to be us all figuring things
Not a
out.
think tank.
Right. It's okay. These are the numbers that we would like to see, or why can't this work, or why can't this work? And if we know that ahead of time and come in, then we can look at the numbers and, I have those last second discussions or the processes and then have that be it. I think an hour and a half is more than enough for that.
Okay, let's do it then. I'll file a special meeting for us for next Wednesday, the 21st at 5:30. Okay,
Perhaps we should check with Bill. Bill, are
No, that's- No, that's fine, because are you looking for suggestions because 1% is $152,000. You looking for suggestions at this point?
do we know what the number for I mean, have we gotten a number from the town in terms of?
the town has presented their first, so they've done like the in their selectmen meetings, so they haven't presented to the Board of Finance, but they've done like their first go over of what the budget looks like before they cut anything. Right, so it'll probably be smaller because it includes everyone's ask.
But I mean, do we have an idea of what the grand, I
Yes.
feel like
So
our
that
aspect in
number-
terms of the overall increase in our revenue is kind of where the Board of Finance likes to have an idea.
So that
So can we
ask-
match our increase in revenue of the town in some way, even if we split it 50-50 between us and the town, if they were to say, okay, the overall increase in revenue is 3%. If 1.5 came to us and 1.5 went to them, what would that number look like? I feel like that's what the Board of Finance likes to know, is if we keep the mill rate static, where are we going?
So it right now, they're a little bit over $700,000 for an increase in the grand list. And as of their presentation, they were taking 500 and change of that increase in revenue. So that leaves us with, if you were to look at sort of the way that Chet's thinking about it, 200 and change before there's an impact. If you watch, not yesterday, but last Tuesday's Board of Selectmen meeting, you can hear that presentation and you can hear those numbers. I think what we have to be really cognizant of is in this budget cycle, they are trying this new approach to capital. And so there's going to be a large capital number this year. And the idea is that they level out capital over time, right? So instead of having capital be $1 million 1 year, they're trying to look at a long-term plan and make it level. But this is the first year that this is happening. And so I think that we can expect that people are going to get a little antsy with numbers. But in terms of the grand list, that's where it is. And in terms of where the Board of Selectmen were coming, that's where they were.
And that includes their capital list or not?
There's no capital included in that.
So that's 500 that they're at free capital.
Right. But I'm certainly not an authority on their budget. So if anybody wants to watch that, it was last Tuesday. You can
So
listen.
can I just piggyback on Bill's question? I think it's a great question. Do you want us next week to come in with, you gave us some input. Okay, and we're going to come back with hopefully satisfactory responses to the input. But do you also want us to come back and say, you know, this is what it would look like if we had to take less than 4.5?
I would love to see what this is gonna look like if our increase, instead of 658 or whatever that number was overall, if that number were 350, if our increase in revenue is 700. I'm not saying that it's gonna be a 50-50 split. I have no idea. What I'm saying is, like, I would be curious if that's the attitude we're gonna take going into Board of Finance, is to have an idea, to be able to look at them and say, hey, listen, this is what we'd have to do. Then I think that's a good starting point, is for us to look at 50% of the revenue increase, what our budget would look like if that's where we kept it. I don't know what other people's thoughts on that are, but if, again, to avoid the back and forth, we can come in and say, this is what we need. This is what it would look like if this is what we got. And I think that that's a good starting point.
I have to agree with that. And I think how your presentation was last time, where you were showing programs that were cutting, like, that's a big impact. And I think that that's what kind of changed the perspective of the meeting, right? They're like, wait, no, we don't want to cut music. We don't want to do this, right? Like, but that it's that shock factor of like, do you realize what you'd have to cut? Not saying that that's what we're going to do, right? But like giving us some idea ahead of time, like Chet was saying, like, what does that impact look like? And that way we can advocate for that not to happen.
Right.
So my preference would be maybe a little different than Chet's preference. And I think a little bit more what Jamie's talking about. I think last year what was the driver to getting our budget through the Board of Finance was the impact. And the impact wasn't necessarily the number, but rather how it impacted the education of the North Stonington student. And so I don't necessarily think that we need to highlight the cost of something, but rather the impact of not having it. You've talked a lot about reallocation. I'd like to see the impact not just be the number, but the narrative of what we'll lose. Because I think that it really helped them to understand why that social worker was important. It really helped them to understand even about the wood shop, the alternative ed program.
But without that number, how do we know what an impact is?
The number is, I'm not saying the number isn't important. I'm saying that I don't want to take the $700,000, divide it in half and say, we'll assume 50%. Let's see what we can cut down to get to that number. I'd rather see us work from a programmatic standpoint and say, if we don't have this, this
But
is the
to-
loss
to
and this
what-
is
to
the
What
savings.
point do we drop it down to then?
So
Like,
I would be
it has to
looking-
go to some space.
Sure.
That's why I was saying 350, because it has, like, we can't just say, oh, I mean,
I would look to the administrators to say so if you had to prioritize the things that you could do without or reallocate, what does that look like? And I would maybe start with the top 3 and then wait to hear. I don't feel like I want to start, then I feel like the Board of Finance a little bit like start by cutting this number. They'd have
but
given us a
I think that
number.
otherwise what you look at is if you're going to prioritize, you're basically saying to staff in the school or to programs in the school, this is where we put you on the list of importance.
Well, we're saying that anyway when we start talking about
Is it,
cutting.
is it possible just to maybe, because you guys need a number to work with, obviously, is it possible maybe just to show everything being equal, just with our contractual obligations and maybe what we anticipate, like utilities going to, what does that look like? So we know what our contractual is. You kind of showed it in one of the slides. We have to do this. We obviously don't want to cut any staff. We're not, if we just stayed exactly where we were going, not developing any further, I'm sure kind of an ugly number. It's not where we want to go, but it might just be an easier to run number.
Yeah, I think I have the number, I have that number in the narrative already.
Right.
And it's 3.8%.
So I'm just wondering.
That's if you
that's-
take out all that stuff on the slide, I say we're gonna now have a budget line for it. We didn't, like
Mhm.
technology and the long.
The 80, all this other
All that
stuff.
If you take all of that out, which is, I think, 0.74% of the budget, and if you take 3.5, 4.51 minus the 0.71, you get like that 3.8. So that's what it is. It's the 3.8, it's the contractual obligations. That's what we need. 3.8. But then you're not funding your Chromebook program, your one-to-one. You're not funding replacement of technology that breaks. So you're back into possibly using non-lapsing funds for all of that stuff.
So I would maybe start with some of that, but I also want to remember that the Board of Finance specifically hasn't given us that guidance because we talked about how in the past that guidance wasn't helpful because a number doesn't necessarily speak to what we're doing. That we'll eventually have to get to a number, but they want to hear from us about impact of programs. If you remember at the tri-board, they said, do what you did before. We tried that year where they gave us the guidance with the number and we were just sort of trying to hit this target.
Then let's go forward with this budget with the answers to our questions and see where we end up on Wednesday. Because I think it's tasking them with a really strange thing to say, come up with something lower, but we want everything that you need. We don't want to be doing exactly what the Board of Finance does. We want to bring our best budget forward. And if it takes a couple of meetings, it takes a couple of meetings, but all these things are important. And I don't want to see you guys really cut anything. We know you can, and we know that could be where we end up, but I'd rather focus on putting together a good, strong budget.
I think an argument could be this budget fully funds everything. Funds technology, funds sports, funds supplies. So that for the next 2 or 3 years, we wouldn't have to take things from non-lapsing and throw them back into the budget, take them out, put them back, take them out, put them back. Like next year, it could just be contractual increases. Because we have money for technology, we have money for repairs, we have money for maintenance, we have money for, all the stuff is there right now to fund those things that don't change very much, utilities and stuff can stay pretty much the same from year to year. The only thing that would happen for the next 2 or 3 years is contractual increases. If this budget went through with maybe a little fine tuning,
That's a good point.
and you could say to them next year, no, we don't have to go back and add 60,000 for technology.
As long as we don't have to. right? That's the dangerous
That's
thing
the-
about saying that.
Yeah, that's the unknown. We only know what we know now.
Well, and I guess don't get me wrong. I think this budget looks great. I would like to see a little bit more numbers wise on the long-term substitute aspect of things. That was the one that stood out to me. But otherwise, like it feels like a great budget. Perhaps I misunderstand what the Board of Finance was looking for, what the conversations were about in those tri-board meetings, because I thought that the expectation was we were going to come with, this is our best budget, and if you do this, then this is what we would have. And that's what I felt like I was trying to propose by saying, okay, if instead of the 658, we're going to get half of the new revenue, this is what it would look like. So if that's not what I'm fine not doing that. It's just, I think, going to bring us into the Board of Finance meetings in the same way we have every year.
That's pretty much what I got out of the tri-board meeting as well. Last year, I think it was Gary who had suggested initially, you know, we want to see the impact. If you had to cut such and such amount, I want to see the impact. And we brought back to them the impact of having cutting. And the result of doing that was they were supportive of our ask. You know, so for me, the rationale of bringing to them not just this budget, but a different scenario that what it would look like if we had to cut this or that.
I think
is to
that's
me-
what we have to do then as the
Yeah,
board. This is
to-
the superintendent's budget. This is what he's asking for. So when we meet next week, we can see those line items. And if we say we don't want the long-term sub, we can't fund it. We want to show it without it. We want to show it without this. I think that would be our job.
Yeah, okay. I'm just kind of saying that I'm not asking that we go there and say we can cut these things and we'll be fine. That's not what it is. I think the objective in doing that would be to, in my mind, garner support for this budget. Like they don't want us to lose this. And they didn't last year. They didn't want us to lose those things. Even in certain things in the town budget, they said, no, we want this. They added it back in without us going back. Or some of the town line items going back and saying, hey, we're going to put this back in and go back to the Board of Finance. No, they said, we want this added back in. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, I agree. I almost feel like we don't present it, but we have it ready. So we have that impact factor kind of in our back pocket. So when they say, well, we want to see this, you can be like, well, actually, I have this right here. And these are what we're going to do. I don't think we lead with it in any way. Like this is a perfect budget, right? And so we lead with this and we really promote it. But when they start to question us, I kind of agree. That was the impression that I got, is that they want to know these things to help support the budget. But it's like at the end of your slideshow, ready to go.
Well, and maybe what everyone is saying is that doesn't want to be part of our approved budget, that maybe we're going to approve, like we're going to.
Never part
approve
of
a
our approved budget. It's
And
just,
then there's going to be some discussion about impact if some things aren't funded.
well, and I guess for me at least, my feel on it was there was an ask that we trust the Board of Finance and that there needed to be kind of that mutual respect and trust between our two boards. And that was what I was feeling was being asked for. And I felt like last year was a demonstration that they would do that when we came to them with the impact and they came back. And normally I would say, no, we don't want to show, like if we show them, oh, well, this is what we could do. And then they're gonna be like, okay, great, do that. No, that's not like, but I do feel like if we can say, this is the reason we need this money, these are the impacts that would happen otherwise, that's the piece. Again, like Lisa said, it's to garner the support, not to offer
Right.
alternatives.
That I think feels better to me, Chet, than saying, if we cut $350,000 to get us half of that to that halfway mark, here's what we look like, because we don't want to advocate for that. We want to advocate for our budget and show why it's so important. So, okay. So
still fine.
suggestions to Troy as soon as possible so that Troy can make changes and then
Yes, and I have enough information to start making changes.
Okay.
But as I get more input, then I can make more. We will talk about possible, like, suppose we didn't get, I mean, you know, the small chance that we don't get 4.51%. Like, yeah, I guess we should think about it.
Okay. Is everyone feeling comfortable that this can be the end of budget talk for tonight? Okay, that's great. Okay. So if we move on to the 24-25 calendar. Troy, do you want to, I know you have to come back to your seat. Do you want to talk about the 24-25 calendar?
All right. So which calendar would you like me to talk about?
24-25.
Got it. Okay, so this is next year, next school year. And we had looked at this last time and there was some input from the board. And I did go back and I talked to my administrators about that. One of the things brought up was the November, first week in November being a little bit broken up and with the PD day, which is a regional learn PD day. So it's kind of important to have it, but then also you get the half days for the conferences on Thursday, Friday. Both building principals felt like that was really an ideal time to have the conferences. Someone had brought up about the elementary school. Some of the teachers didn't have the data to talk about how the kids are doing at that point. That was clearly identified by the administration and Kim Haggerty actually about it's the new reading program that they were implementing and they just hadn't done a particular assessment yet, but they will have by next year. So they will have more data. Rob felt it was helpful because it's before the end of the first trimester that the elementary school is on, Wheeler is on quarters, and it's just after the first quarter ends too for Wheeler. So they both felt like it was an ideal time. So I'm bringing it to you again to present it to you. And I don't think there is any other changes other than how we organize the bottom of it to try to make it more clear. We put all the staff development days together and they're all green. And then, you know, see all the holidays, vacations are red, and to the right, this is Irma's brainchild. I think is genius. Just to make it clear about what's what. Notice that the purple, February 18th and May 23rd are the only two weather days. Okay, because we wanted to keep that last day on the 13th. And we're hoping that you have your superintendent next year doesn't call more than 2 weather days. But safety first, no promises about keeping it to 2. So that, I mean, that's it. I mean, so it's pretty much the same. I think someone has a comment.
I do have some comments. So I do still feel really strongly that it's a little rough for that with the half days, but perhaps we'll have some options to make that less rough. I did have a request, if at all possible, just to kind of get back to what Stephanie was saying at the last meeting where about the February break. Would it be possible, because I know it's not traditional, but could we take that May 23rd one first? Because it's so close to the end of school, like that one goes first, and then you take the February 18th one. But then you have like a little bit of a break. I understand.
What if
this-
you have a storm on February 26th and now you don't have a day to take and you already used the 18th as a holiday?
But what would you do? What if you would already have more than 2? I guess.
Then
is
they're
what I'm
both
saying.
gone anyway, but you're not.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. This is unconventional. And I'm also saying like, I feel like on the 23rd, like people are ready to be done. But on the 18th, this is kind of getting at a compromise with that February break. If we had that February break that day as a possibility, I'm just throwing that out there.
Do we want to make a motion to approve it and then have discussion on
Okay,
it?
sorry.
I move to approve the 24-25 school calendar.
I second.
Okay, discussion. Does anybody else have things to add about the calendar? After
Sorry, I have-
Jamie's comments? Oh, no,
Sorry,
you
I
have
have
more.
one
Okay,
thing. I'm
sorry.
so sorry. So I bring this up every year that the elementary school hours are dismissal at 3:10. And I don't necessarily believe that that's the actual dismissal time, which is fine if we could just have the actual time. So if it's 3:05, that would be fine. I just wish it was written somewhere in writing instead of 3:10. Because I have,
If it's 3:05, then they have to start their day at 8:20.
Well, that's why I actually noticed that they started at 8:25 now next year instead of the 8:30.
right. Well, so I'm just saying that I have pulled up to the parent pickup line at 3:07.
Yeah.
And I am the last parent. So it just seems like we're missing some time, and it's not a big deal if we don't have that time. I just want it to be in writing as when the actual time of pickup is.
Well, and it is because it's contractual. So they have to be teaching X amount of.
And
hours per
I've pulled
day.
up next to her as that last parent on multiple occasions before 3:10 rolls around. It does, it
It's
does
cleared
feel
out.
like there are.
I-
And maybe the clocks, I know in my own school, the clocks are off compared to real world clocks, which means that things are slightly different and can get confusing. But again, if we're reporting this time to the state as our official number of hours that go into play, and it really needs to be those hours.
I want to check on that time. I think it could be a misprint on that. Because I do remember something with 3:05 before. And if you look at the start time on this particular one, it's 8:25. And if you look at the current year, the numbers are 8:30 to 3:10. So I think we may actually be practicing 8:25 to 3:05, which is the same hours, like in terms of contractual.
I've also dropped off in the
But-
morning and not managed to get my kid out of my vehicle anytime before 8:30.
Well, and the other
So
thing
again,
is
it was-
mixing-
Okay.
It's just, and it's just the process, like, again, I just think we need to make sure we have the correct times down.
Yeah.
So whatever the actual times are should be on the calendar and
Yeah.
they should be followed.
I can
Um,
check with Rob about the actual times and.
And busing
our-
turnaround is tight, so I'm surprised they cut 5 minutes too, because I don't, some buses, they're barely squeaking in time for 8:30, so.
Well, so I was under the impression that the doors don't necessarily open until exactly at 8:30. Which is fine, but there is quite a backlog to,
Can I amend my motion to approve the calendar as printed pending clarification on times of start and end at the elementary school?
Yes, because I was just going to give up on your motion. I was ready to just say, clearly, we can't do
So I
this
amend
tonight.
I amend my motion for the school calendar pending clarification on start and
Or
end
just
times for
specifically
the
on
elementary.
dates.
I second that.
Okay, the motion has new life.
Can I just ask regarding, so can we then officially set June 13th as a piece of this vote as graduation date? As long as on this calendar, there's more than 180 days, that is acceptable under state law, yes, based on
Our
what?
contract is for 182 days of teaching, so
I
it
think
has.
Chet might be suggesting that the graduation date might not be the last day of school for everyone.
Correct.
So he's saying that we would graduate on the 13th, but there's a possibility that everyone's, with the
Everybody
exception
would
of
be,
those
would still
seniors,
be coming back.
the 16th and the
next-
17th or
Okay,
whatever days.
So devil's advocate again, Kristen St. Germain is going to tell you that makes it an issue with the all-night graduation party. Because technically that's not a school sanctioned event because they've graduated and they've moved on. That now makes it a school sanctioned event and that puts liability on her that she in the past hasn't been very happy to have.
I think the idea is to graduate the kids, the seniors, on that day.
They
At
would
13, and
still
they
no
would-
longer be
They're not.
students.
The
So the
other kids
seniors would
remain
not
our
be.
students for the future.
Generally speaking, for the-
Seniors are not our students anymore.
Generally speaking, for the graduation, or the after grad party, it's actually a positive thing because it means that you can set that date and it doesn't turn into a situation where you have to figure out a floating date, which means you can book down. It was one of the reasons why people were really excited about the idea of the set graduation date was for the after grad party. So they are still officially moved on by the Board of Education at that graduation ceremony and no longer students. Liability is null, but all under, freshmen, sophomores and
Oh, wait,
juniors
no, no.
return the next week. Usually what it does mean, and this would be a question, I guess, for administrators would be,
But-
it makes complicated finals schedules if you get really far off, because then your seniors finals are earlier. But a lot of high schools do that anyway, because you need to be able to tell if students can actually graduate. So I don't know, Troy, if you have insight on that. I like the idea of having a set graduation date, and that way parents, family, everybody knows long ahead of time. This weekend is going to be graduation. If people are coming in from out of state, if other things are happening, they have months without concern in terms of planning that process. But
I can speak to as my son graduated last year and I was on the party planning committee for the graduation party. And for months, yeah, it's a huge expense, this graduation party. And you're booking vendors and entertainment and all that. And we're kind of trying to be solid, but knew it was really fluid, based on whether we were going to have, the weather days, or whatnot. It all ended up working out for us, but it would have been great if we knew for sure the whole year what the graduation date was going to be. It is a big deal too, obviously, the graduation itself with folks coming in from out of town. I mean, you make airline reservations 5-6 months in advance, so I'd be planning now if my kid was graduating on June 13th, grandparents come in from wherever, or just my input.
Other thoughts on the calendar? Troy, do you feel like we can, so Chet's asking if we can also vote on the graduation date now?
I
or
don't
do
know
you
that
just-
we need to vote on it.
are we gonna, I guess,
If it's set, And
I'm
we-
gonna pull my motion. I would rather have the admins weigh in on this.
yeah, I was gonna say, do we just want to have them make sure that there's a reason why they haven't wanted to do this in the past? Do we want to make sure it
So,
works?
yeah, approving the calendar could be one thing, and then the graduation date could be something else, because you never really voted on the graduation date when you approved the calendar before. But now we know there's the law that allows you to do that, and that could, I think could come later. I don't think you need to decide that when you vote on the calendar.
I think ideally we would do it, right, when we voted on the calendar,
do.
but maybe because it's the first year, and I think it's,
I don't think so, because I think we have to, what, April 1st? Isn't that the date on the setting up graduation?
so I think we got some clarification on that, right, Troy, because we have 182 days of school.
Yeah, as long as you approve a calendar that has at least 180 days, it could have more. That, and you have yeah, you're right. Yeah, actually, I think you do. You have to, when you approve the calendar, you have to say, this is the graduation date.
What
So
if
I
we
think
have
it's the
5
same.
snow days,
You could still do it.
but we wouldn't have 180 days then and we'd set a graduation date without
No,
it
no, you
standing
just
out?
need to have at least 180 days on your calendar when you approve it. I could
Oh.
bring I mean, I sent it to you, but I
You
can
sent
bring
it
it
to
again.
us already.
Yeah.
So tonight, do we want to, there's a motion on the table to approve the calendar. I think Chet, you're asking for something separate unless that's included in Christine's motion. And Christine, I'm hearing that you don't want to amend your motion to include that. Is that right?
That's right, Steph.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I would also,
Really?
I was looking, because I would rather have Kristen be able to tell me, right? Like
Yeah.
I would prefer to know that before. I am fine voting on the calendar, right now and having a separate thing with the graduation, if that is something that we can do separately. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think that the calendar is stated is fine. It would just be that if we were able to, I think that that's a service to our parents. But if it's a problem with our administrators, then
I think there's no reason why you can't wait another meeting to approve the calendar and get that input and do it all at once.
Okay, we're gonna. Christine, would you like to rescind your motion?
I'd like to rescind my motion.
Okay, so the calendar, we'll see another day. So this part should be way easier, I hope. So we used another snow day and Troy did send out an email today talking about, or I got my email today, but I think some people got it earlier. That we've used up our 3 weather days.
I sent a message out yesterday as well.
I didn't get it until today.
Oh, that I sent out today.
I didn't get a
That one.
message yesterday, but my
You didn't get
husband
the
got a
yesterday's
message
one?
yesterday.
Yesterday was
Weird.
different
Yeah,
message.
it's weird. I didn't get
It was
one,
a better message yesterday.
but that's okay.
Matt?
I didn't get it yesterday.
No, that was a
Yeah.
different one. Yeah, I've been messaging a lot.
I did not get it.
No,
yesterday.
so we didn't all get it yesterday, but
Wow.
in any event, we all got one today, I think, that says that we've used 3 of our weather days up. So now there is school on 2/20, there is school on 5/24, and there is school on 5/28. So given that we are changing the calendar and creating school days, even though we approved it, I wondered if someone would make a motion to accept this amendment to the 23-24 calendar.
I'll make a motion to accept the amendment.
Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Perfect. Moving on. Okay, so really quickly, our Board of Ed meeting dates. So this sort of goes along with what we were talking about earlier in terms of the budget. So when looking at the capital budget timeline that was handed out to us about how all of this will play out in March, our regular Board of Education meetings are taken by the Board of Finance, which maybe was done because they'll want us there, but it leaves us without meetings in March to do our regular business. It looks like in April, we are okay because for whatever reason, the meetings that we filed in April are not on our regular. Right, so we should be fine in April. We're the 1st and the 3rd Wednesdays in April rather than the 2nd and the 4th.
How did that happen? Like, that they could take it, aren't we all?
We are on the calendar and they are not, but this budget timeline was created and it was created by Christine Diaz, who has since left. And so I can't get any sort of rhyme or reason, but in any event, it's happened. So I'll see Mike Anderson at a meeting tomorrow and I'm certainly happy to advocate for those dates coming back to us. I'm not seeing where that fits in. So I think we are going to need special meetings to do our regular.
Can we meet
Board of Ed
prior again,
business.
just like we're planning to do for this other meeting?
We can, if people feel like they could do 5:30 and if we feel like we can trim down our regular business to an hour and a half, we won't have a lot of time.
well, I mean, it looks like we have no problem staying within a 3.5 hour.
Right,
long-
exactly.
But-
So, what are your thoughts? So we can either do a special meeting on the 12th, which I know Jamie is not in favor of because Jamie is working on those nights. But we'd like to have you here. And then, potentially the 25th, which is a Tuesday.
It's the winter sports banquet.
Oh, you're right. And the 26th is now the Plan of Conservation and Development public hearing. So maybe Christine's idea of just attacking our meetings earlier than the Board of Finance meetings is the way to go, although we will
Can
be.
we minimize our agenda and just remove presentations and all of that piece of things and just do necessary business? Like,
Yeah, I think we'd
It's
have to
budget and
trim it
most of our
down.
stuff has to do with budget anyway during this time
Yeah.
period. All of our brains are going that way. Can we just do no presentations in March? Bare bones agenda, do it one meeting and have it beforehand. And if we need to do something else, then we call a special meeting then. Like I would rather, we don't need to call special meetings for March now, right?
And that
If-
presentation was just student, not just, but is student activities for winter, so we could push that.
So we
one
can
off.
fit that in other places.
Right, I mean, we have two full meetings in April that we can push things to if we need to. I would say that we do a singular meeting on a Wednesday as a special meeting that we call now, and then if we find that we come to that and it's like, wow, we've got 3,000 things that we need to get through, call a new special meeting, and we can do that for a following week at some point, but at this point, let's just set a Wednesday 5:30 meeting, see if we can pound out what we need to pound out and be done with it.
So you all agree that we're gonna shrink down to one meeting in March? Right, so Chet, are you saying both Wednesdays or just one? I heard Chet say one Wednesday.
I guess if we're gonna take out presentations and all of the other pieces that fulfill most of one of our meetings, why don't we, I would start with a meeting, but that's me.
There's also the drama presentation, performance on the 27th March, I think.
That's on a Thursday, right?
No,
the
that's on a Wednesday.
I have that on my calendar.
Elementary School Drama Club?
Yeah.
No, it's always on, I think it's on Thursday, the 24th, or no, 21st,
I
isn't
don't
it?
know. I have, okay.
I only know Leo's in it.
So Wednesday, the 27th would be our regular Board of Ed meeting anyway. And it's when we have to meet and present to the Board of Finance any budget changes. So Chet, in addition to doing our sort of bare bones work, which I think we need to go over our monthly financials and that sort of stuff, we may need to discuss obviously changes to our budget. as
Right,
we
but
go
those
back to
usually come up on whatever day we can pull off afterwards, and we can call that special meeting after we find out whether or not we need to be meeting for those specific things, right? I mean, we may
And
need
you
to,
can't change the budget an hour before you're gonna present it.
Right. I'm just saying, I'm not sure that we can get away with one regular meeting in March. That's from 5:30 to 7.
Just schedule both of them. You can always cancel one.
Okay. Is everyone okay with that? That I just make our Wednesday meetings earlier? And then if we don't need that second one, we can get rid of it?
I'm concerned that even two isn't enough. I mean, it is budget season.
We can always add another
We
one.
can't add that.
I'm assuming that we're going to have meetings outside. We always have meetings outside. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, if we can set one that we know we're gonna do the things that we need to do, all those other ones are going to fill in those holes with the budget pieces.
Okay.
And we're gonna have to call those when we call them because we don't know I mean, we don't know how they're gonna work out.
Okay, so I'll schedule the meetings. And then we'll schedule extra ones from there. Troy,
Did you, that was March you're talking about, right?
yes, I think
Wanna
April,
talk about
I think
April, or you-
April will be fine.
April's fine. April 3rd, do we have the meeting scheduled?
We
for that?
do.
Is there a conflict with that one? I think there might be.
April 3rd, it may be, but it's in italics, so
Oh,
we may
okay.
not
Oh,
need to
good.
be
All right,
there.
we'll hope for the best.
And so we can deal with that in April. Okay,
Did you want me to talk?
Give Back Club?
All right, yeah. So do you remember the nice trip to Maine some of our kids took to go to the serve at the Vietnam Veterans Breakfast in Augusta, Maine, right, last year? Well, the Give Back Club would like to do that again. And they would leave on Monday, March 25th. They would stay overnight that night and stay overnight on Tuesday, March 26th. And then they would be serving breakfast that day. And then they'd be serving breakfast and then staying overnight. And then they would be leaving on Wednesday and coming back. And so there is a permission slip. It would be our advisors driving either in private vehicles or one that they rent like they did last year. They would be staying at one of the advisors' homes in Maine. They have a house in Maine. on the first night and then a hotel on the second night. There would be up to a maximum of 10 kids. We think there may be fewer kids because of other obligations, which will be determined, I think already determined. So, you know, it's a nice experience for the kids to provide some service to veterans who serve the country, and they got a lot out of it last year. It's Rebecca Schilke and Becca Costello are the advisors. And they did a similar trip last year, so.
I'd love to make a motion to approve the trip for the Give Back Club to head to Maine on 3/25 to 3/27.
Second.
All those in favor?
Oh, discussion. You gotta
Oh,
always ask.
discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that looks like everyone.
Thank
Perfect.
you very much.
Okay, we are now on to policy approval, but we don't have any to approve because we were talking about bylaws. So we're going to handle that at the 2/28 meeting. That brings us to Board of Ed comments for future agenda items. Judy, you
real
got
quick,
one?
I do. The signs at the entrance of the schools, if we could just add that on the agenda, because the time is messed up on both signs and it's really causing a confusion in the morning and at pickup.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Anyone else, future agenda items?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Good night, everyone.